Hello there, hello there, hello there, my little chickens. How the devil are we all? How are we getting on? Are we well? I do hope so. I am sweating my fucking cobs off, if I'm entirely honest. It's still too hot. People aren't really supposed to live in these conditions. It's not human. It's not fair, is it, really? When I agreed to be British, I didn't agree to these conditions, okay? This is not the Brexit I voted for. I voted for drizzle all year round, overcast skies, cold winters. That's what we wanted. That's the Brexit I voted for. Hello there, Helena.
Oh, are you enjoying the adults in the room, Kev?
I'm loving the adults in the room, but I'm mostly sweating. This is not the Brexit I voted for. Cold weather, drizzle. This is the requirement. Good God. Anyway, you're going to come to Birmingham tomorrow, and it's going to be like fucking Barbados. Ridiculous.
Literally, Barbados.
Indeed. Yes, the adults in the room. They're back. Don't you love the sensibles?
Yeah, I will overrun with sensible governance here. Remember when everyone, like all of the liberals, kept telling you, "Oh, Keir Starmer's a decent man. You have to, he's decent. I mean, he may not be everything you want, but at least he's a decent man." And turns out he's also not a decent man, and also a massive fucking asshole.
Well, I think I described it in our DM chat as something like the Omni Shambles U-turn clusterfuck turbo shit job or something. Because it really is.
On the Shambles Turbo U-turn fuck up bill.
There you go, that's the one. Because like this is fucking dreadful. For those who don't know, the welfare bill was being voted on today, and is it the worst of both worlds? They've managed to gut the bill so it's sort of pointless, but still kind of fucks with disabled people, but saves the country not a penny, whilst also having the worst comms ever.
Yeah, so it's essentially they have incinerated all their political capital for nothing over this. Now, I think that, broadly, the bill as it stands now is fine to vote for. A lot of people are getting angry at the people who still voted for it, and, like, I don't really care at this point. I mean, it is bad.
It's basically dead, yeah. It's been hollowed out, yeah.
So the way the bill stands right now is that they're still spending money on a bunch of good things to help people get back into work. Things like job coaches, funding for job centres, all these things that give people access to more help to get back into work if they need it. You keep things such as the right to try as part of the legislation. These are all good things. All of the money that they're spending on things that help generate the public services that are necessary to be able to assist those who are workless who want to get back into work, which is a lot of workless people. These are all good things. Now, there is a specific cut in terms of the fiscal part of this bill that has remained, which is the limited capability for work-related activity payment as part of universal credit. That's not the same as PIP. It is for people who are unable to work due to incapacity, and that's been halved, essentially, from £97 to £50. And so that is a big cut. But the biggest cut, the biggest fiscal saving, the biggest fiscal measure in the bill, which is what's been U-turned on, is the entirety of Clause 5, which is changing the way in which that they calculate people's eligibility for personal dependence payment, the payment that you get for being disabled.
The thing that we've mentioned before about you have to meet these at least 4 criteria, blah, 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 and basically made it impossible for even the most disabled people to prove that they're actually disabled.
Yeah, so like 1 million people might have potentially been removed from it, which is a huge number.
And that's been backtracked on. And not just that it was backtracked on, because technically it hasn't been as of yet, because they had to vote on the bill as was. But they decided to U-turn on this and concede on this in the middle of the debate, which I don't think I've ever seen before from any government. Even the Tory shambles governments didn't fuck around this much. And I want to play people this clip. Trust a Geordie to sum it up perfectly, right? Ian Lavery, one of the better MPs in Parliament, one of the very few decent Labour MPs. I don't know how the fuck he still has the whip. Anyway, describing this. So, usually, in order to make amendments, you have to do it beforehand, or you pull the bill and change it completely. They decided to use an intervention on somebody else's contribution to the thing to announce a major future change to the legislation, which I've never seen before. It's insane.
Yes, I've never once seen a massive commitment given in a bill like my right honourable friend, the Minister, gave in an intervention in a contribution. This is crazy, man. This is outrageous, man.
It's outrageous, man.
This bill isn't fit for purpose. If you have a look, it's 16 pages. I can ask you, right honourable gentleman, to rip the ones out now. That's changed. There would only be 2 pages left. Withdraw the bill. Discuss.
That's not a bill anymore. It's a pamphlet. They passed a pamphlet of no changes. It's amazing.
The contents of the... Well, only that far, you know, Madam Deputy Speaker. Only that far with the commitments that have been given by the front bench on some sort of satisfactory bill which everybody could get behind. I think if we had another hour or 2, we could have voted on something which we all would have agreed with, instead of this hodgepodge of a bill which means nothing to nobody.
True.
It's so true. It is so true. And that's what's happened, really. I mean, the response from Kemi Badenoch in the Commons on this was to say, well, it's now going to cost the government money. It's a total shambles. They're now saving nothing, and it's going to increase spending.
Basically,
Increasing spending on universal credit, which is going to go up. The rate of that is going to increase higher than inflation. Increasing spending on things to help people get back into work. It's fine. It's absolutely fine, right? Again, because both the Tory position and the Labour right position, which is basically just a Tory position but in red, is that the only thing that matters is bringing down the amount that you're spending. I mean, even the FT article I was reading about this specifically claimed that there was a ballooning welfare bill. I'm like, well, no, it's still around about the 10 to 12% of GDP that we spend on welfare that it's been for the last 10 years or so. It's just they have essentially agreed prima facie, because it's been capitulated by the Labour right, because they only follow, they don't lead, that we must bring the welfare bill down because that's what the Tories do.
Yeah.
This is the thing that Morgan McSweeney, who we're going to talk a lot about in this video, has been adamant about, that the Labour Party is at odds with the public over things such as welfare. This was the linchpin of him running Liz Kendall, the current DWP minister's election campaign for the leadership in 2015 of the Labour Party, was that we need to find that link between working class communities and this disdain for welfare that's been kind of cultivated by right-wing politics and right-wing media in this country. If we want to win, rather than winning these people around, we have to go to where they are and follow their lead on welfare. When in reality, we looked at these stats the other week, Kev. Even the reform voters they're trying to chase hate the welfare reform bill. They hate it.
Yeah.
The only political voter base who think that it's worse or have a less support for this welfare bill is the Green Party. Yeah. So that actually the Morgan McSweeney, the electorate whisperer, is just totally wrong about this.
But today could have been the time when Keir Starmer began to turn things around. If he'd pulled this bill and fired Morgan McSweeney, instead he briefed Cabinet before, he spoke to Cabinet, they had a Cabinet meeting this morning, in which he said all briefing against Morgan McSweeney must stop. Brilliant. So you've learned absolutely nothing there. Fantastic. Also, if all of your Cabinet are briefing against him, maybe get rid of him. Maybe.
I mean,
rather than alienating your entire Cabinet. And then, bit by bit, over the course of the day, saw all of his credibility with his backbenchers disintegrate as they salami sliced this piece of legislation to nothing.
It's so true. And that's the thing, right? Is if I was trying to convince people that I was really in charge and that I know what I'm doing, and that I have the confidence of not only my own backbenchers, but in terms of the broader kind of Labour apparatus, and I'm not just a balloon with a smiley face on it that does the bidding of my master Morgan McSweeney, I wouldn't put out a statement going, actually, all of your nasty words are really mean. You need to stop saying them, because actually he's perfect and wonderful, and you just don't know how much of an excellent man he is. Well, right?
It's so frustrating, because apparently he said they wouldn't have won the election without him. So, I mean, firstly, your lack of self-belief is sort of telling. And secondly, you didn't win the election. The Tories lost it. The Tories committed Harry Carey in front of the entire nation. He literally went out into the rain and committed political suicide. It was fantastic to watch. As Steve Bray played Things Can Only Get Better very loudly. It was amazing. You didn't win it. Everyone hates you. You've been the least popular Prime Minister ever. You're not a nice person. No one likes you. No one has any passion or enthusiasm for you. You didn't win the election. Morgan McSweeney didn't win the election. The Tories lost.
No, exactly. 100%. And Reform UK helped them lose it by splitting their voter base.
Yeah.
So it made it extra likely that this giant majority was going to exist. A giant majority that they can't even corral around a piece of legislation, especially since it was backbenchers that they hand-selected through the interference within the parliamentary selection process for prospective parliamentary candidates.
And interestingly, my own MP, and I don't know if he was ill or whether they paired off with a Tory that wasn't there or something, but my own MP, Al Carnes, a person no one's heard of because they were a new MP and they're shite, but technically a minister in the government, abstained on this. So I don't know
I'm
if
not
that's...
surprised.
I'm not... Is he going to get fired? He must do, surely. I don't know.
There must be a huge reshuffle after this. There's no confidence in the government itself.
Kendall's got to go. For her own sanity. She's been, like, literally the fucking Wicked Witch of the West for the last month now, right? Going out there every day saying, no, we have to do this, we have to do this. And at the last second, they got Stephen Timms to stand up and say, oh, actually, no, we don't need to do this. Basically saying, she's been lying. We didn't have to make all of these poor people even fucking poorer, actually. And then sat down. Completely undoing all of that evil that she's done over the last month. Like, why has she sold her soul? For what? For what purpose? She should leave. She should actually resign out of principle and be treated like an absolute wanker in front of the entire country.
Well, the thing is Liz Kendall's always been the true believer, right? She was the true believer in 2015 and she's the true believer now. Like, the reality isn't that her political career has been undermined here. It's the fact that her political career was always shit because she was always a monster.
Oh, no,
she's been a monster for the last decade.
Always a monster, but very specifically, the monstrousness that she's been defending, they completely ran back on. So now now there's so many clips of her going, no, we have to do this, otherwise the country will sink beneath the waves and we won't have any money, and then the sea monsters will take over and kill everybody. And now they're like, no, we don't need to do that. Actually, it was fine.
It's true. And also think about not just her that gets their career undermined, right? Remember the Arbeitsmacht-Frei Brigade? Who wrote an open letter praising the fact that Liz Kendall wanted to throw disabled people into the wood chipper, right? David Pinto Duquesne, Helena Dolim, all that lot, right? All that lot. We're like, no, we really back it. We want to oppose these rebels. And now they've done that for nothing.
Yeah.
Helena Holodomor, I'd like to call her.
Well, I feel bad for the Angel of Death because she passed that bill. And now the steady stream of financially eviscerated disabled people that she would have been feeding in to the Soylent Green machines won't be eviscerated quite so hard anymore. So she's been denied all of her future victims, which is deeply sad for her. She's worked very hard for that.
And what's really important, I think it's worth mentioning here, there's two things. First of all, is that whilst it is MPs who rebelled that got these concessions to happen, and I'm glad that there were MPs and enough of them on the Labour benches that were A, not clucked enough to the Starmer project, and B, had enough of a moral conscience to throw their weight behind trying to tank this bill through reasoned amendments, through speaking against it, through arguing with people like the Whips, right? I think it's really important that we understand that I'm glad that those people were there, but those people's position, as we've seen from Meg Hillier U-turning after the crappy kind of half U-turn they did beforehand,
God,
right?
That's tragic, yeah.
These people are only doing it because they fear the wrath of their constituents. But obviously there were holdouts even up till now, like Rachel Maskell, God bless her soul. She was really good at speaking against it.
There's some really disappointing one. Dawn Butler abstaining. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why would you possibly do this? You know, and why are they even trusting them? They already, the deal they cut behind the scenes earlier this week, they already went partly back on. Because I saw one of them being interviewed saying this isn't even the deal we agreed to. So they're already lying about the things they're trying to roll back on. So why would you trust at a committee stage they're not going to fuck you over there too?
I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I guess if it fucks over at committee stage, they'll just vote it down at third reading anyway, so whatever.
Well, that assumes any of them have the backbone to do it at third reading, and I'm not entirely convinced or confident that they do. But we'll see.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, because at the end of the day, right, they understand that their constituents are the ones who are going to be the judges of them at the next election, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's important, is that despite that there is some moral conscience here somewhere, and there's a lot of parliamentary game playing too. The real people who need to be given their plaudits for making sure that this bill got U-turned on and the climb down on Pip. Every single disabled person, every single ally of the disabled who dragged this government over the coals in the public discourse on social media, that called these people out for the monsters that they are, that wrote to their MPs, that picketed their MPs, that went to protests, that got their voices heard over this and forced this government and forced the ministers and forced their parliamentarians to get this into a position where this bill would not pass in the state that it was before last week, right? These are the real people that need to be talked about as the people responsible for getting us to the position where at least we're losing the worst parts, the most egregious parts, the most depraved parts of this bill, right? What absolute heroes we stand these people. And what this means is, right? Bullying works, chat.
Yeah.
Bullying works.
Well, I've said this for a long time. A lot of the briefcases in Parliament didn't get bullied hard enough when they were kids. Simple.
Exactly. Like, if we want to ensure that this happens again next time Sir Keith wants to bring a draconian, monstrous piece of legislation to Parliament, if we want to ensure that this can be U-turned on again, we make sure that these people know how much the public hate the kind of things that they do and force them into U-turning, we must bully him harder and on more things.
Yeah.
We must drag his name through the mud. We must drag his name through the mud every single day if we have to. We must make Keir Starmer hate the fact that he's a public figure. He needs to hate that he's Prime Minister. He needs to not be able to show his face in public without being sneered at and hated. We need to make sure that he finds his days as Prime Minister as excruciating as the last, even more excruciating than the last, to the point where he knows that the public will throw him out and eventually he leaves, right?
Yeah. Well, they're already queuing up the next piece of evil, as you see on the screen here, the full review of parental leave. Now, when have this Labour Party ever done a review of anything that increased or improved the situation? No, I mean, they're going to try and cut parental leave. Let's be entirely honest. That's exactly what they're going to do. Is undermine it under the guise of helping, as it says there, parents and employers. Naturally.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. We shall see.
So get ready for the next battle of Morgan McSweeney trying to destroy everything about this country.
Just 1 second, bits.
Thank you to who was it? Katie Marshall, who says this jump scare should be for all who voted aye. Well, indeed so. Yes, thank you. Everyone go and follow Katie Marshall / Mad Cat Scotty aye.
Absolutely, definitely do that. Definitely
and
do
Sister
that.
Rose, awesome. Hello, Sister Rose. Everyone go and follow Sister Rose as well.
Okay. What I will say, obviously, with regard to the vote on the bill, is that. Now, I did say earlier, like, whatever, I think it's fine to vote for it now that the worst part's been removed. I would still vote against. You can't trust this government. You can't trust that they will continue to stand by their word, because, of course, it is full of people who have made a career on lies and deceit. Starmer and McSweeney's entire platform has just been lie to people and hope it pans out, you know? Yeah. So I don't think you can really trust them. So I'm not going to really go against or try and drag people for voting against it now that it's basically been stripped of all its usefulness. It should have been removed. It should have been pulled. They should have pulled it completely.
Well, this is like it's such cope that they even went ahead with this because they just needed the win. They just needed to say, "Oh, we got the bill through." It isn't the bill anymore. It's this, like I say, it's a fucking pamphlet. It's a flyer. That's what they got through here. Nothing.
But what's important, though, is that there is one element of it that still remains, as I mentioned before, which is the cuts to the limited capability for work-related activity payment, which is something that affects those who do have incapacity. It's just part of universal credit rather than a separate disability payment.
Well, there's also, and this is, I think, potentially how they're going to try and work around this, if they can. Stephen Timms was asked, and actually, if you want to, I've got the closing statements lined up from Parliament, because that's actually the more interesting. The opening statements don't matter because it changed so massively over the course of the debate that it doesn't really mean anything. But the closing statements are quite withering, so we could have a look at that. Anyway, oh shit! Well, hang on. Remind me of what you said. I've lost my train of thought.
I'm gonna clarify that. It's that the limited capability for work-related activity payment is actually really important for those who have is actually really important for those who have incapacity, specifically because this is, again, to help them with the fact that they find other things difficult, is to try and remunerate them for not being able to do other things that other people can do. Slashing that by 50% is monstrous. It's absolutely monstrous. Like cancer sufferers, people recovering from chemotherapy rely on the LCWRA payment of universal credit. Taking that away is monstrous, and they shouldn't have done that either, right? Like, what is the justification? There is no justification. They just need to penny pinch for the Treasury. So that alone should make it worth voting against. But if they're going to increase things such as the right to try or whatever, like, if on balance, if you wanted to vote it through because you think they'll change it at committee or during a third reading, then whatever, I'm not going to hold it against them. But broadly, the idea that anyone from the Starmer Politburo, from the government, Liz Kendall, any of these people, right, those who aren't on the backbenches, the idea that any people from this government are U-turning on this out of a moral position, out of any kind of morality, because there are still immoral things in the bill that they have proposed here, is for the birds. They're doing it to save face. They're doing it because they don't want political humiliation, which is all it takes, which is what it takes, right? The length you have to go to get Starmer to U-turn on immiserating the disabled is threaten him with political humiliation. That's what you have to do. If you're Wahid Ali, you can chuck him some Arsenal tickets and he will no longer want to remove the ability of foreign entities to influence politics, right? Because that's the thing that happens, right? That's very easy to get Keir Starmer to change his position on if you're someone who has his ear. But even his own backbench MPs, who have been saying for 9 months that they oppose this stuff, even they don't have his ear. He doesn't deserve to lead. He doesn't deserve to be Prime Minister. The man is unfit for office, unfit to lead. He has to go.
Well, several of them have already admitted that even though they've been in power or in office for a year, some of them have literally never met Keir Starmer. Because he doesn't care. The arrogance, like along with the corruption and the venality of it all, and the fact that it's basically just a Tory government. One of the things that should be remembered about Keir Starmer's premiership is the absolute arrogance. We don't need these backbenchers. We've got a big enough majority that we don't need to. And unfortunately, this is the problem that, and I've remembered what I was going to say. The way they're going to try and get around this is in a technicality, because of course he's a fucking lawyer, is the difference between primary and secondary legislation. So the changes that they're going to make here are that they're going to get rid of that 4-point assessment thing, the Article 5 thing, until after the Timms review. So Stephen Timms, who's the person you will see speak for the Labour Party in this closing statement in a second, is the junior minister in the department under Liz Kendall. He will be doing a review of the impact of these potential changes. Now, I don't trust that he's going to do that honestly to begin with, but regardless of that, after that review, potentially they could introduce this thing as an amendment, right? And asked several times by people like John McDonnell, and he didn't even have to write a strongly worded letter on this occasion, he did it verbally. It asked Stephen Timms whether this would be put into primary or secondary legislation, this amendment. And the second part of the important part of this is, if it's primary legislation, MPs can add amendments. If it's secondary, they can't. So in other words, will MPs be able to have a say on the introduction of that 4-point policy in the future, should it be deemed okay after the obvious whitewashed Timms review that's going to happen in 2026? So they were essentially going to try and lock MPs out by introducing it in secondary legislation. And that's obvious, because if it was going to be primary legislation, you'd just say so. And then you allay the fear of the backbenchers. But they didn't. Because they're bullshitters.
It's crazy just how desperate they are.
Yeah.
They're desperate to want to throw disabled people into the woodchip, but these people are evil.
Literally, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, James Holmes, with a super chat. What foodstuff will end up seeing off Keir? Oh, I presume that's a lettuce reference. It has to be gammon, I think, doesn't it? Gammon doesn't last that long if left out in the sun. I don't know.
So if we want to watch the thing, 16-Bit Mango, which was Phil, who was on there talking about the civil service one time. Remember?
Yes.
They want to come in and jump in and have a chat at some point about this once we've finished going through all our segment and stuff, which I would be very happy to do. If you
yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to anyone, yeah. I've spoken with Richard Spencer. I'll speak with any fucker. So I don't care, because I'll call them
and
a wanker if they're a wanker, and I'll be cool with them if they're cool, Yeah.
But yeah, like it's just like. So Stephen Sims is the the Social Security Minister. Like we
Yes.
watched him debate Stella Creasy on LBC yesterday, and God, he's a really rancid human being.
He is, and also now that Michael Fabricant's left, arguably the worst haircut in Parliament.
True. He was also the first Post Office Minister to not respond to Alan Bates.
And he got stabbed.
Oh, he did get stabbed, didn't he?
He did. He had a big fucking knife pushed through his stomach. Now, I'm glad he survived that, but that was a thing. What happened? A crazy person tried to kill him. Anyway. Okay. Oh, of course, the food stuff that would be up against Starmer would be sausages, because he has to release the sausages, obviously. How did I not see it?
Them.
Yeah, amazing.
We have run out of time, and I call the Shadow Minister, Helen Whately.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This has been an extraordinary afternoon in this chamber. Listening to this debate, surely all of us have been moved by the stories we've heard of honourable members' own experiences, the experience of their families and loved ones and of their constituents, of how the welfare system has served its vital purpose of providing a safety net in times of desperate need.
Hang
wanted to cut 12 billion. The reason that you didn't vote for this is because it wasn't horrific enough. You cheeky bitch. What the fuck?
I can't stand it. Like, every Tory who just tries to pretend that they have like a soul and a conscience and that they have some level to which that they empathize with normal human beings, especially the vulnerable. Like, come off it. No one believes you.
Yeah.
No one believes you.
Oh, Marcus, when I disparaged lawyers, I wasn't even disparaging lawyers. I was saying what they do is pick away at technicalities, which you know is true. You were a lawyer. That's how it works. There's a reason they can get out of ironclad pieces of like legislation is they find anything. That's the job, you know?
Particularly for people whose disabilities or ill health have made it impossible for them to make ends meet on their own. It is clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, that there is a broad consensus across the House that the welfare system needs reform. There has also been a consensus that what we were debating today was a bad bill. It was a rushed and chaotic compromise that would harm disabled people, create a two-tier benefit system and barely make a dent in the overall welfare bill.
But thankfully the adults in the room managed to take that and use the refining process of debate in the House of Commons to make it even worse. To make it an even worse piece. Now, don't get me wrong, a morally much better piece of legislation, but an actually worse process and essentially legislative outcome. Because you've now got a committee stage where they're going to have to completely chop it to pieces. It's ridiculous. This bill is an ex-bill. It has ceased to be. Okay? It has gone to meet its maker.
It's pushing up the daisies.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just incredible. Again, she says, "Oh well, we all agree the welfare system needs reform." Like, you mean cuts? That's what
they
you
just
mean.
mean cuts. Yeah.
You know, and again,
and she's like, "Oh, well, we need a system in place for people to protect them." You wanted to cut 12 billion. That's basically all of it. What are you talking about?
Having already cut huge amounts from it during the time in coalition with the Liberal Democrats.
Indeed.
Like, you had already led to human rights violations against the disabled. Like, your party made people flee England. Disabled people had to go across the border to Scotland to not die, to avoid killing themselves, right? That's how draconian and monstrous you were in government. And now you're trying to do this weird dance where you say, well, we also care about the heartfelt stories, but also we need to reform it and make it worse, even worse than we already made it, which was human rights violating. Like, it's this fuck Tories. Like, genuinely just the most despicable subhuman shit cunts you've ever seen in your life.
Well, to quote one of the great parliamentarians of all time, to me they are lower than vermin. Oh. Rest in peace, Nye.
We do stand.
How could anyone justify voting for something that would not make a single disabled person's life better? It's clear that many, many members couldn't. And I say it was a bad bill, because while we've been here debating it, the bill has more or less disintegrated.
Pining for the fjords? Sorry.
Less than 2 hours ago, the Social Security Minister told us in an unprecedented intervention that Clause 5 of the bill is to be removed at the committee stage.
Yeah, that's
that takes
mental.
out all the changes to
That's mental. Boris Johnson didn't get his ministers to do this. To do an intervention, which again, it sounds like a strange thing maybe to foreign viewers or whatever, but it's completely unprecedented. They're just in the middle of an intervention. So somebody else's contribution to the debate, they interrupt. And now the person doesn't have to sit down or anything, but they took the intervention and they went, oh, we're just going to completely gut this bill. You know, the thing we've been discussing and debating really passionately for fucking months. Yeah, no, we're just going to get rid of it. Brilliant.
9 months! This was deliberated for 9 months!
Yeah.
They knew for 9 months that this bill was coming. They knew there was going to be a backbench rebellion. They did nothing for 9 months. These people are idiots.
Well, that's what I mean, the arrogance of it. They just went, nah, it'll be fine. They'll eventually just vote for it because they're our little fucking gimp boys. And eventually the gimps have risen up.
So arrogant.
Yeah.
Such arrogance, such disdain for the parliamentary process.
And
right?
it's blown up in their faces, because if they hadn't been so disdainful, they could have sorted all this shit out behind the scenes. It didn't have to go to the 11th hour.
100%, you're absolutely right. You're 100% correct. It's just the arrogance, the disdain, the conceit of the Starmer Politburo, of McSweeney, of Reeves, of all the little hangers-on from the little Labour Together bubble who believe that because they won one leadership election, essentially entirely on lies, they have dictatorial central control of the Politburo, of the Central Committee, of everything, and that everyone else has to adhere to the democratic centralism, and whatever they say goes, and if they don't like it, they can lump it. And they forgot that actually they do need the votes of MPs to pass legislation.
I was about to say, Stalin could just fucking kill people. Like, Stalin could send you into exile and then fucking ice pick the back of your head. Starmer actually has to go through a parliamentary process. It doesn't work in this sense. It's mad.
Just like no one can forgive. No one should forgive. They should be absolutely dragged for eternity.
Yeah.
McSweeney and Starmer for selling this country out to Nigel Farage, right?
Oh yeah, no, they've insured. Well, I mean, today was another nail in the coffin, but it was already very firmly shut of avoiding a reform government at the next election. Now they might not. I still don't think they'll get a majority as it currently stands. We'll wait and see. Especially given that Farage and his ilk are fucking volatile people. We'll wait and see how that all goes. But I think there'll be a majority. I think there'll be a reform government now, because they've ensured that no one wants. No, the Tories are dead, and no one wants to vote for the Labour Party because the Tories don't represent Conservative voters, and the Labour Party don't represent Labour voters.
Nope.
So at best they're going to just not go to the polls, and at worst they're going to go, oh fuck it. At least Farage has some semblance of a fucking opinion, and seems like a human being rather than just a robot. Which, it's as if that's the shrunken state we've got to, that just appearing like a basic Homo sapien is enough. That sets you apart from the hoi polloi of Parliament now.
Exactly. And again, it's just going back to the article. I know I'm going to keep mentioning it because it just blew my mind, right? The Tom Baldwin puff piece on Keir Starmer, where he was just like, well, this man is a normal guy who is different from all of the rest of the career politicians. I'm like, bitch, of course he isn't. He's just the same conniving motherfucker as every other politician.
Oh, as if you would say that about the briefcaseiest of briefcases.
Exactly. A man, again, whose entire political position is, here are my principles, if you don't like them, I have others. No one believes him. No one thinks he's sincere. Everyone hates him, right? And at least Nigel Farage, for all his faults as a human being, and believe me, there are many, at least he seems sincere to the public. I think that's a really important point from Politico Teacher in chat, right? Which is that the rebellion here is not just about the welfare bill, even though a large part of it is the fact that this bill, before all of the removal of the PIP stuff, was monstrous, depraved in every sense of the word, right? It's broadly a referendum internally on the Starmer administration and the direction of the party, which is going in a direction, both as you can see in polling, as you can see in approval, and just ideologically, that the Labour movement doesn't recognise.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that they would fucking. I mean, he's just he's the king of the briefcases. As if you would ever possibly try and sell this, oh, he's an ordinary guy type shit. The motherfucker, literally, he before he even got his fucking feet under the table, he was taking money for his fucking glasses and his wife's dresses and Arsenal tickets, and his kid getting to stay in a fucking penthouse for some reason. Although at least that did protect them from Ukrainian rent boy attack. So there's that at the very least. Anyway, thank you, Katie Marshall, with for the super chat, but also for the dead parrot reference. Much love to you. Don't forget, the Labour Party also want to eviscerate us. Probably, I reckon they're going to come after the streamers next. I reckon.
I mean, they're definitely coming. I mean, they're coming after trans people. So I'm.
Well,
fucked,
that's
right?
no, exactly, yeah. Whereas I'm a white guy, so I'm probably all right for a bit.
Well, you're Irish though, so you know.
I am Irish, and well, to be fair though, Birmingham, it's on high ground, and it's got massive rats to defend it. So like, come at us, you bitch.
The Skaven army will rise up.
Exactly, yeah. Yes, so you can do bits messages, super chats, become a member, subscribe. You can do all of these things. You can. I believe in you.
Independence payments, and with it, almost the entirety of the remaining savings in the bill. Describing this as chaos now feels like an understatement. Here we have a government.
Oh, I forgot the funniest bit from the start. Right, you know the initial bill. Right, the estimate was that he was going to drive 250,000 people into poverty, and then with these changes, they were like boasting at the start that it was only going to eviscerate 150,000, driving only 100,000 into what's called absolute poverty. That this was something they were touting as if like, look how nice we are. We're like Mother Teresa or some shit up in this. Look, no. You're bad. So was Mother Teresa. Not the point. You're fucking evil ghouls. As if you're boasting about this. Fucking
literally. I mean, again, this is the kind of draconian fucking nonsense that got Liz Kendall 4% in the leadership election. I'm just like, everyone hates this. Everyone hates it so much, and they know that everyone hates it. So it's like, well, the only way that we can ever get this to be the Labour Party platform is if we lie to people.
But I don't get, like, if you want to be a Conservative, you're allowed to be. Join the Conservative Party. Why are you in the Labour Party, Liz Kendall? I don't understand why you would bother. Because you're clearly not, you don't believe in Labour, you don't believe in any kind of progressive, social, economic, advance. You're a Conservative. Join the Tory party, or the Reform Party, or whatever. Start your own fucking weird right-wing party. You're not a Labour Party politician, so leave.
And like it gets to the absolute kind of nadir of all of this, is them essentially reworking what the idea of what a Labour Party should stand for, what the Labour even means.
Yeah. Oh, we stand for work. No. You're supposed to stand for Labour, not work. That's
workers,
like some yeah, exactly, workers rather than work. Like that's some weird fucking Protestant fucking work ethic shit. It's just mental. Stop it.
It's Toryism.
Yeah.
It's literally Toryism. It is, and not even like new neoliberal Toryism, like old school kind of like Eden Churchillian Toryism,
Yeah.
A super majority voted in on a manifesto for change, a welfare system which everyone agrees needs reform, and public finances which simply must be brought under control. But the government is now serving.
I fucking hate this line that both the people running the bill on the right Labour Party and people in the opposition is saying, so everyone agrees the welfare system needs reform, right? No, we don't. I don't agree the welfare system needs reform. I don't agree with that at all. Because again, by reform you mean cuts. And by essentially saying the welfare system we all agree needs reform, they're trying to smuggle this in by even small changes, like not a whole scale reform, but like changes to how we look at the right to try or whatever. We may agree on this, but fundamentally what they're trying to get into the public consciousness is this idea that there are too many people on welfare and we need to take them off it.
Yeah.
Right? That's what reform means to these people, and that's why they try and smuggle it in as part of this broad euphemism of needing reform. So, well, everyone agrees the cuts need to happen. No, I don't agree the fucking cuts need to happen. I don't agree with this at all.
Well, okay, I'll reword it to be accurate. Everyone in Westminster agrees that they need reform.
Yeah. Everyone in SW1,
All of the new paper columnists, or everyone in the media, they all agree. And damned be the proletariat.
Up a bill with next to nothing in it. They'd already U-turned once. It seems they can't even deliver a U-turn. The Prime Minister...
Literally. They U-turned and then had to just get rid of it completely. They U-turned on a U-turn to the point where they're just chasing their tail at this point. It's nothing. They're just getting dizzy, I think.
told the country that he was distracted at NATO. He flew back home on Thursday.
Oh, that was the best. That was the best. He was like, well, yeah, the reason we fucked it up is not because we ignored the problem for the best part of a year. No. I was at NATO, so I was busy. You have ministers? That's why you have a cabinet, Kia. Like, what do you mean you were at NATO, so you were busy? Well, don't go to fucking NATO then, I guess. Send your defence secretary. I don't know. Fucking bellend.
Literally, Diane Abbott said, fucking, no one believes you, Keir, that you messed this one up because you were abroad. That you can't have at least a mind on important legislation because you're abroad.
Yeah, well, ultimately, as you pointed out, he's not fit for position then. If you can't handle going to a NATO summit and not completely forgetting the key piece of legislation you're trying to pass, you can't be Prime Minister, because you need to be able to do both of those things.
Yeah, he's not fit for office. He's never been fit for office, and the fact that he's been sold to us as fit for office is a travesty. There's a travesty that this man has been ever touted as fit for office. He clearly is not. Literally a man who said, I did a racist speech by mistake. Like, you can't just do these things by mistake.
And then repeated it 2 days later to GB News in Albania.
Like, he's fucking fluffer. Tom Baldwin was on Sky News or BBC or some shit going, all those Times Radio saying, oh, the good thing about Keir Starmer is that he learns from his mistakes. I'm like, you are the most powerful person in the country. You can't afford to just keep making mistakes. Go, it's fine, I've learned from my mistakes.
Also,
you're not expecting infallibility. I'm at least expecting you to not get everything wrong.
Well, exactly, yeah. But also, how has he learned? Tell me an occasion upon which he has ever learned. He's doing the same fucking things. He's doing the same shit. How many fucking rebellions has he had to face down with threats and fucking backhanded bullshit? The fucking King's Speech, the 2-child benefit cap, the winter fuel payments, this thing which he's had to run back on 1 million times. Like
all the shit about the all that time when they're in opposition around the ceasefire vote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, he's awful. He hasn't learned a fucking thing.
He is a liability. He's a total fucking liability to this country
Yeah.
if maintains his position, right?
Yeah.
It's so egregious that just how much of a giant failure, a giant failure all this has been. All of it from start to finish.
And they're just still going to continue to do the genocide. Seemingly haven't learned anything there. That's cool.
No.
They're literally going to try. They're literally prescribing Palestine action, which, by the way, you can still say I support Palestine action until tomorrow evening, if you wanted to. Obviously, I'm not saying I support Palestine action. I'm just saying you can say I support Palestine action. And they're doing it. They're going to outlaw them, along with the Russian Imperial Unit, which is, as you would imagine, a far-right Russian imperial terrorist organisation, and the Crazy Murder Squad, or whatever the fuck they're called, which is a weird far-right neo-Nazi murdering fucking organisation.
Maniac Murder Cult.
Maniac Murder Cult, partly run out of America, but their leader had to be extradited from Moldova, which is a fucking weird place to go, I suppose, to be tried in the United States. And Palestine Action are being treated the same as all of those fucking evil bastards for painting some private planes.
Well, specifically because that means that if any MP votes against it when it comes to Parliament, the Labour right can smear them as being Putin's puppets.
Yeah, and being like, and who wants to say no? I voted not to make the Maniac Murder Cult terrorist group. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's just like when you see with the legislation in the United States where they just go like, well, this person voted against commemorating the Holocaust when it was a bill that also had like cuts to Medicare and also funding for the Iron Dome in it. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
They do it all the
Sort
time.
the problem out. This is what sorting it out looks like. Once again, his calamitous negotiations are letting the country down. Last week, we offered him help in the national interest. We set out 3 tests that he would need to meet for our support on welfare legislation. The first was that the welfare bill must come down. All of us know people whose lives would not be possible without the help that our welfare system provides.
12 billion.
Again, it's just like what they say with, no, we really think we need to stop the tragedy of people dying in the Channel. I'm like, no, you don't.
You absolutely
actually want that at all.
don't. No.
You just have to pretend that you care about human life, even though everyone knows that you absolutely despise human life. Well, there was a point I was going to make about Keir Starmer as well. The fact that when he said he was too busy being abroad to understand there was a huge welfare rebellion brewing. And it was just like, well, that's because fundamentally he doesn't care about actually governing. No. Fundamentally, actually, the whole reason why he's here, first of all, is to be, again, the balloon with the face on it to implement whatever Morgan McSweeney, the Shadow Prime Minister, wants to do. But on top of this, his personal ambition is to be Billy Big Bollocks.
Yes.
That's it, right? Yeah. He wants to be the important man.
Yeah. Even though he's not. He's a glove puppet. He's Morgan McSweeney's fucking cocksock. That's it. That's all you are, Keir Starmer. You are not Prime Minister. You are Prime Minister in name. You are Prino. Or whatever.
Literally, he just gets to what he wants to be, the man who gets to wander around all of the halls of NATO, speaking to the other posh and the other famous and the other political leaders. But even that's
embarrassing. Like what he gets to scrabble around on the floor to pick up papers that Trump dropped. That's your big moment in the sun, is it, Keir Starmer? Literally on your, well, not quite on his knees, but hunched over, picking up money so that Donald Trump doesn't have to squelch down in his fucking diaper full of shit and then not be able to get back up and you'd have to pick him up or something. Jesus Christ. That's essentially what he was doing, was babysitting a demented old person for the afternoon.
Stop it.
That's his big like historic moment. Fucking incredible. Thank you, Sozzled Snake, for resubscribing. Maybe Keith should bring out the rubber sniffing dogs again. They'll get him back on track, probably. Yeah, I imagine so.
Every one of us in this chamber wants a welfare system which is there for those who need it. But the fact is...
No, you don't. No, you absolutely don't. Everyone in this chamber. You know Tory MPs exist, right?
You are one, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they won't exist much longer, but they do technically exist
Inshallah.
Right now. Yeah, and reform will replace them, and they'll probably be worse. They'll probably be like, actually, no, I personally don't think the benefits should exist at all ever.
Oh yeah, she wanted to. I mean, you say that she literally agrees with you. She wanted to get rid of the concept of the welfare benefit for people on PIP and wanted to replace it with a voucher system.
Yeah, and the voucher just says die. That's it.
One's like suicide booth, one admission.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be fair to her, the Angel of Death has got a solution. It's a catch-all for any problem. Too poor, too ill, too old, die.
Also, non-binary points out in chat that she's incredibly posh. And I was just like,
yes,
something I've forgotten.
Oh, school check.
School check.
With that voice, there's no fucking way she didn't go to like some crazy ass posh school, right?
She went to 2 different private schools.
Yeah, it was poor people go to 1 private school. I went to 2.
One was Woldingham School, the boarding and day school. No prize for guessing where Woldingham is in the country. And then went for 6th form in the private Westminster School in London.
Of course she did.
After going on her gap year teaching English in rural Nepal, she studied PE at Oxford.
Look, posh people, you don't have to be stereotypes. I did a gap year in Nepal. Brilliant. Amazing.
Gap year in Nepal. I just chundered her through her. And oh my fucking god. Not only did she go to Oxford, not only did she study PP, not only did she have a gap year, not only did she went to 2 separate fucking private schools, including a boarding school.
Yep.
Her very first job was at fucking PricewaterhouseCoopers as a management consultant.
Literally the worst person ever. Like, there are Nazis with better war records than this person.
Literally, and after that, she worked for McKinsey. Literally, her entire life has been literally a fucking waste. She is the most useless person.
You've taken up oxygen that could have been used by someone worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah, someone whose contribution to humanity was at least partially relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, she's the poshest cliche ever.
Literally. Oh, but I think all of the people she hurt in Nepal. Oh, yes. Oh my god, yeah.
If the welfare bill spirals out of control, it puts that support in jeopardy. But this bill now makes no meaningful changes to a system that we all agree isn't working. It will now save, I reckon, less than £1 billion from a sickness benefits bill, rising to nearly £100 billion by the end of the decade. This is a total dereliction of duty by a government that claims to want welfare reform and fiscal discipline. Secondly, we said we would support...
I like the fact that she has so little authority that even the people behind her are just chit-chatting. Even her own leader is just, like, chatting away with some dude. Brilliant. There's just a kind of hum of, like, boredom in the chamber.
True. 60-bit Mango, you know, she
And
used her gap year to claim she was a hippie for a while. It's bound to be. No, she connected, yeah. She connected with nature. She connected with the people. Again, she was the colonial savior in Nepal.
I don't want to do this
I really got in
anymore.
touch with my spiritual side, you know? You really become one with nature. And then
God, I really wish them...
And then I went to work for an oil company. Thank you, Katie. Her life has been a meme. True, absolutely.
Yeah,
she is
literally,
just posh
literally.
person .gif.
get people into work, but this bill won't help a single person into work. Ministers have said, trust us, employment support is coming, but why would anyone trust this government?
That's not true. It will bring people into work. It'll bring new ministers into their portfolio very soon. It will also get rid of the absolutely same number of people from those portfolios, but let's not look at that. Let's just look at the new ministers.
When 100,000 were lost in May alone, and none of us have actually seen the government's plan to get more disabled people into work. Apart from new red tape and making it more expensive to hire people, I don't think there is one. And thirdly, we said we must not have more tax rises in the autumn. Given that the Chancellor had already committed to this, it should have been the simplest of those three conditions to agree to. But now this desperate climb down blows an even bigger hole into her budget. She is pushing us into a doom loop of higher taxes, fewer jobs, more welfare and higher taxes. At this rate, the time is coming when our constituents won't even have a welfare system to call on in times of trouble.
Oh, I think Stephen Timms fucking said this yesterday, saying, well, if we don't cut welfare now, people might have to cut it later, or it might never exist at all. I'm like, bollocks, that's bollocks. Because again, first of all, it's not even rising that much. Again, GDP expenditure, around about 10 to 12% broadly over the last 10 years. It's slightly higher than it was before, but it's still not massively increased based on what it was a decade ago. And even then, like, why would the whole thing collapse if it just slightly increases for the next 5 years? Like, where is this stat coming from? Where is this heuristic coming from?
Her arse. She pulled it straight out of her arse. Yeah.
Pulling straight out of her arse, right? Literally, it's just, and the scaring of there
Well,
are
I
some
say out
people
of
who
her
really.
arse, but by looking at that side shot, she doesn't fucking have one. Good Lord.
Well, that's the thing, is they keep saying that essentially the dog whistle here, the dog whistle they're going for, is to try and pitch to who they perceive to be the people who actually, the genuine people who need it, right? The deserving recipients of PIP, and saying, oh, look, there are loads of people who are taking it who don't need it, and you should hate them because if we keep giving it to them, then we'll have to take it away from you eventually instead, right? That's what's so sickening about this rhetoric, right? Really fucking disgusting, depraved rhetoric, in that they're trying to pit the disabled people against each other.
Yeah, well, they have to try and pretend that they're in favour of some disabled people. Because they can't just come out and say, oh, actually, we literally would happily mince you and feed you to dogs. Which they absolutely would.
Which is funny, because even Tory voters don't like this welfare reform bill.
Yeah.
To be fair, they were the group of voters that were the most supporting of it, but that was at -4, right?
Well, as I said to Liz Kendall, just go and join the Tory party. They're clearly the people who like you, or let's say, hate you least.
Also very funny for her to say, oh, well, the welfare bill and taxes are the highest they've ever been. I'm like, well, wasn't that also a thing that you did?
Yeah, literally.
Because not because they tried to just remove numbers of, not because they tried to increase number of people who had access to welfare or try and make it so they had better welfare payments. They did the opposite of both of those things, you know?
Yeah.
They cut away from the welfare state for these people, but the number of people on welfare increased. And the amount they had to spend on the welfare state increased because they kept cutting all the other important pieces of the public realm that stopped people from becoming disabled in the first place, like the NHS and like things like Sure Start and all of those things that are there to protect people's mental health.
Indeed so. Thank you, Ico Rules, for raiding. Much love. Everyone go and follow Ico.
Yeah, wow.
How are you, Ico?
That's a blast from the past.
Yeah, I haven't. She usually streams at different times than I'm frankly awake because I'm a degenerate. How are you, Ico? So you've probably left by now. I know as a streamer you raid in and then you go to sleep, right? Hopefully you're well.
Speaker, what is...
I do like what's his fucking name here? The purple socks. I do like his socks and combo tie.
Chris Bryan.
Maroon
socks.
Yeah, blue tie.
Navy blue tie.
It's snazzy.
It is snazzy.
I mean, he is a wanker, but snazzy.
Is there left for us to vote for or against this evening? All of us in this House know that welfare needs reform. All of us in the House want to see more people helped into work.
And it's so ironic that they keep saying everything needs reform, because that's exactly what it's going to get, the Reform Party.
Well, it's like the joke that I read like all those years ago, which is that if I was going to invent an alcoholic drink, I would call it responsibly.
Yeah, drink responsibly. Nice.
Yeah, so every other drink has to advertise my drink. In the same way that all of this, we all agree the country needs reform. I'm like, Nigel Farage has come along and go, oh, you do you?
Exactly, yeah.
I also think the country needs reform.
Yeah.
All of us in this House, or surely most of us at least, recognise that the country must live within its means. The remnants of this bill will manifestly achieve none of this. In fact, the only purpose it will now serve is to etch forever into the statute book the moment when this government totally lost control.
Yeah. Actually true.
But it's funny. What's funny as well is she's so useless. Yeah. I think you could have gone so much further at tearing the shit out of the government here. They kind of pulled the punches.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, ultimately, they want to eviscerate more, but they realise that was what the opposition was to the fucking bill, from both the country, their own voters, and the backbench of the Labour Party.
And also, I think they want to slash the welfare budget. They really, really, really want to slash the welfare budget, so they can't really be too mean to a government that wants to do that.
Well, they did. They literally dangled that thing of like, oh, well, we'll save this bill if you come along with us and just cut a bit more, and we'll vote for you, and then you'll be fine.
I call the Minister Stevenson.
Wow. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We've had a passionate and eventful debate. We have heard, Madam Deputy Speaker, the concerns, and the government will amend the bill, as my right honourable friend and I have set out. But the system we've inherited does not work. Uniquely in the G7, our employment rate is still less than before the pandemic. Every other G7 country has got back to where it was before or better, but we haven't.
I mean, that's at least in part because they invested during COVID, whereas we went, nah, let's not bother, actually. Don't need to do that.
And the system is trapping hundreds of thousands of people needlessly in low income and inactivity. The system tells people they cannot work, for many of whom it is simply untrue. We have to change it. I'll gladly give way to Michael.
I'm sorry to come in so early in this
Here he is.
but we have limited time. Could we have the assurance that the concession that's been given this evening with regard to the Timms review, that the outcome and recommendations of the Timms review will be in primary legislation and not delegated legislation?
Well, I'm grateful to my right honourable friend. And let me just say a little bit about the announcement I made in my intervention on my honourable friend, the member for Peterborough, earlier on. So we've listened to the concerns...
The announcement in the intervention.
Debate, specifically about...
Yeah, that's just passed by as if that's a perfectly normal thing that happens ever.
A new 4-point threshold being implemented before the outcome of my review. So, as I've said, we will, in fact, now move straight to my review, only make changes to PIP eligibility activities and descriptors following that.
But
review.
I can't help but
We
feel
will table
that getting the sort of junior minister to look at his own work, so to speak, is a little bit kind of, the IDF investigated itself and found it to be, in compliance of law. Like, is he going to come back and say, actually, no, that thing we planned to do, actually it would have been way worse. So, like, 20 million people were going to be minced tomorrow. Like, no, he's going to come out and lie, obviously. I don't fucking trust these pricks.
No one should.
I will give
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way. Can I ask the Minister to confirm at the dispatch box that Clause 5, specifically referencing the need for claimants to score 4 points in order to receive the daily living allowance, will be removed from the bill?
Yes, I can confirm to my honourable friend that is the case. And we will table the amendment to do that. And let me also say, and answer the honourable member from South Antrim, who raised this point perfectly properly in the debate, that we will also remove the parallel provisions for Northern Ireland. Now, he suggested that would mean removing Clause 6. It doesn't mean that, because there's a lot of other things in Schedule 2, which is referenced in Clause 6. It's Section 4 of Schedule 2, which addresses the points that we're dealing with.
So the Northern Irish don't seem very happy. So apologies to our friends in the north there, who seemingly the Labour Party are going to fuck over because the legislative difference, bitches.
Also, it's going to be really good for like the SNP now, because all of the fiscal elements have essentially been removed. They keep their Barnett formula for social spending.
Yeah. No, that
Still,
is
they'll be able to spend just as much as they were planning to do so to continue reducing poverty, whilst the Labour government still fucking sit on their hands.
Well, not just that, but like it's a double win for the SNP, because, like you say, fiscally this works out better for them, and everyone in Scotland now thinks, the Labour Party are trying to fuck over disabled people, even though they're sort of not even doing that anymore, or at least for the most part not doing it. So, like,
again,
the comms,
all of the political capital
couldn't be worse.
Yeah, and Anna Sarwar was like full-throated in support of like both sides of it. Just continue being like Scottish Labour must be so angry, right?
Yeah.
Of course, a lot of them are bellends apart from Brian Leishman, but like still getting just thrown under the bus and completely having their reputation ruined by Labour in Westminster when they were on the cusp of breaking back through in Scotland again. Yeah. And then Keir Starmer comes in and just like sweeps away all their electoral gains by going, "No, gonna ruin everything for you. SNP dominance forever."
The SNP should refer to it as the McSweeney bump. Because that's what they've gotten this week, I think.
A century of SNP dominance away.
Yeah. The SNP gets sworn in for their 53rd, government or whatever, and they're like, why can't the Labour Party break through in Scotland? This is the least popular government in the history of the world. And the fucking, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Let me just make a little further progress, Madam Deputy Speaker.
I'm sorry,
actually, I still haven't.
to Vineyard Province, the MP to the right of Stephen Timms apparently looks like someone from Harry Potter, and I know you mean Vincent Crabbe.
Yeah,
one of the Slytherin bullies.
He does look a little bit, yeah. I wasn't going to say nothing because, like, I'm not in any position, but yeah. Also, why does he have a sort of military haircut? It just looks a bit... It's an odd mixture of things. He's got quite small ears as well. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not...
But he does look like the actor, yeah.
Indeed. Well, yeah, I mean, to be fair, they are going to try and fuck over poor people as much as possible, but the worst element of it has at least been postponed to the point where I think it'll just get kicked into the long grass. I don't think, having been fucking mauled this week, I don't think the government are going to want to touch this shit again. They're just going to pass whatever rump nonsense remains of the bill after committee and just leave it. It's not, they don't want this fight again. It's a little bit, it's not on the same scale, but it's a little bit like with Brexit. Like, everyone's just sort of sick of how damaging it is, so just let it fucking go.
Yeah.
I still haven't quite answered the intervention that my right honourable friend, the question that he put to me in the first place. And his question about...
He does look a bit like Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah. There's a kind of bloated... Did you see Kyle Rittenhouse this week? He was like signing books and stuff. And he looks like a J.D. Vance edit. He's put on so much weight. He's put on so much weight. He looks like a J.D. Vance edit. I saw it and I thought, like, have they got... Why has he got Kyle Rittenhouse books in front of him when that's clearly like one of those J.D. Vance pictures? And it wasn't. It was literally just him. Oh, it's bad. I mean, I would say, look, Kyle, welcome to the club, mate. I'm a fat prick who looks a bit like a J.D. Vance edit too. We need to look out for each other.
Whether the outcome of the review will be implemented in primary or secondary legislation does depend on the outcome of the review and the form of the assessment that we take.
I don't think John McDonnell is convinced by that piece of lying.
Don't think so.
No, it doesn't matter about what the outcome of it is. You can say no, we'll put it into primary legislation. Doesn't matter what outcome you come up with. Your primary legislation literally encompasses every single possible topic in the world. Can be primary legislation. Doesn't matter. You're just lying to him.
Take forward, and we'll come back to that. We will come back to that when we've concluded the review. Let me make a little bit of headway before I intervene again. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, under the last Labour government, in the 12 years up to 2010, the disability employment gap fell steadily. In 2010, as soon as the Tories and the Lib Dems took over and scrapped the New Deal, it stopped falling and has barely shifted since. What this bill opens up is the chance once again for proper support into work for people out of work on...
No, it doesn't do that at all. You're a liar. But also, much more importantly, people wanted to see it. So, who am I to deny the people? There he is.
You just plot up some wraparound sunglasses on him, put him in a pickup truck, get him to film some TikTok videos, and he has become the meme.
Or just get him sat next to a couch. Just get him sat next to a couch, and everyone knows what that'll be. Come on now. Anyway, you wanted to see it. There you go. Don't say I don't give you what you want, chat.
Health and disability grounds. We will provide that again, recognising that with, for example, far more mental health problems amongst young people, the needs post-pandemic will be different from the past. I listened with great interest to the powerful speech that my honourable friend, the member for Stockbridge and Penistone, made, calling...
Firstly, it's clearly Penis Town. Don't even start. And secondly, I believe this is the disabled woman who doesn't have hands, basically. I don't know what condition led to this, and she was giving a speech and then basically eviscerating Liz Kendall, which I think I've got on the Twitter if you want to see it. It's really powerful stuff. And then
I have seen it. Yeah,
Liz Kendall had to stand up and pretend not to be a ghoul who wants to fuck over people like her. Yeah, no.
Well, they have multiple disabled people on there. They have multiple disabled MPs on their benches, and have just essentially treated them like shit.
Yeah,
just because they're fucking evil. They just are they're just evil people.
Yes.
For a target for the disability employment gap, I think she makes a strong argument, and that's the kind of approach that we need to develop as we bring forward our plans for employment support. So
again, that she didn't look massively kind of happy about the minister's statement so far. Yeah, okay.
The bill opens.
She literally looked like she was about to start fucking crying, which is not a vote in confidence, I don't think.
She's seeing the fucking Labour Party be shredded in front of her eyes, right?
Yep.
A lot of these backbenchers have probably been members for decades, potentially their whole adult lives, and they're watching the McSweeney Politburo in their fucking hubris, in their conceit, rip it to shreds in front of people because of the desire to look like fucking sensible adults in the rooms. But that's it.
Well, that's the thing. You can tell it was always about the looking like monsters bit. It was the performative cruelty of it. Otherwise, they just pulled the bill at this point because it doesn't really do anything. So what? Oh, they have to just sound like they can say like, oh well, we've reformed the system. No, you haven't. You've done virtually fuck all. But you got to pass a bill, and so the country gets to see you as the fiscally responsible. We're taking on the evil wokes that care about disabled people. It's embarrassing.
Bill opens that possibility up.
Except, of course, as they've been doing this, their whole thing has been, oh yeah, but actually Bobville and fucking Kneecap love Labour in all of the right-wing press or whatever. It's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
With work disincentives inserted by the previous government into universal credit, the current system forces people to aspire to be classified as sick in order to qualify for a higher payment, and once so classified, it abandons them. We've got to change it. I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way, and the House knows that he is not only an honourable man, but he has spent the...
God almighty, we've got an even posher voice somehow. Sir Simon Hoare, or whatever his name is, yeah.
Like, I can't hear an honourable man anymore without thinking of that fucking presentation that Mark Corrigan gives about wanting to be president of the Freehold Committee.
Yeah.
disproportionate of his parliamentary career looking at these issues.
Issues.
He must surely understand, however, that the confusion which has been expressed in this place is now being felt and expressed in the country at large. I have never seen a bill butchered and filleted by their own sponsoring ministers in such a cack-handed way. Nobody can understand the purpose of this bill now.
Adults in the room. Fucking hell. Honestly, this government are a joke.
In the interests of fairness, simplicity and natural justice, is it not best to withdraw it, redraft it and start again?
No, Madam Deputy Speaker. And let me tell him one of the things that the bill does. Part of the problem is it is very hard to bring up a family on the standard allowance of universal credit. The Tories reduced the headline rate of benefit to the lowest real terms rate for 40 years. Families have to rely on food banks. People aim to be classified as sick for the extra benefit. The system should not force people into that position. It needs to be fixed, and the bill makes very important changes in that direction.
I think it's what's crazy. Is that they could have just not done the disability shit.
Yep.
They should have raised taxes and gone, let's increase universal credit. It's really everything he said there.
Yep.
100% correct. Yep. Everything he said was bang on. I agree 100%. That what the Tories did by reducing universal credit, by allowing people to not be able to live off of the money that were given by the states, they had to rely on food banks and charities, right? Like, for 12 out of the 14 years of the Conservative government, universal credit or the welfare payments for those out of work did not cover the essentials to live. Yeah. Right? That's fucking monstrous. It's fucking demonic, right? He's right to call that shit out, right? But you can't say these things when the whole point of the bill was to fuck over disabled people who are obviously more vulnerable than people who just happen to be out of work.
Yeah. Can we get the Honourable Jenny's take on this? That would be the Pupperino that you can see on the floor there. Her take on this is disability cuts bad, belly rubs good.
True.
Which, you know what, I can stand on that platform. Yeah.
I had to come here today with the intention of voting against the government on this bill. I have to say that when it comes down to the removal of Clause 4, which everyone at home I'm sure will be delighted to know...
Clause 4, you dopey bastard. Honestly, that's... Also, why are there all these young people in Parliament? Who is this in the bottom left? They look like a YouTuber.
I mean, I think she's reasonably high up, isn't she?
I don't... Well, she's in the back row, yeah. Eyo. So I did a verticality joke.
So Clause 5, which I'm sure everyone at home will be delighted to know, completely withdraws PIP from the scope of this bill, and consequently there's nothing to vote on. But could the Minister give me some comfort?
Consequently, there's nothing to vote on.
It's going to be taking place within a spending envelope.
Minister.
What I can assure him is that the review is not intended to save money. That is not the purpose of the review. The review is...
He does look a bit like a J.D. Vance at it as well. Yes, that is true. It is a certain look, yes.
To get the assessment right and to make sure we've got an assessment which will, for the future. I need to make a little more progress, because as a number of members have highlighted in the debate, my honourable friend the member for Clwyd North, my honourable friend the member for Southampton Itchin, a key step in this bill is the first ever permanent real terms increase in the standard allowance of universal credit. Actually, it's the first permanent real terms increase in the headline rate of benefit for decades. And the Tory party, of course, is against it.
Like, you can tell how badly this has gone for the Labour Party. Every time they cut to backbenchers, it looks like they're at a funeral. And, in a way, they kind of are. For their own party.
For their own careers.
Yeah. Yeah, they can see thousands of votes going into the incinerator by the second.
Or the Labour movement more broadly, as I said before.
Yeah.
Those benefits time and again. They created these work disincentives and mass dependence on food banks, which this government is determined now to address. And what
have they done to address food bank usage? What have I missed? Did I miss this particular piece of legislation or, change to anything?
Well, I guess the increase in universal credit, right? The above inflation increase in universal credit is the thing that they have done to help.
Okay, but that's in this bill, isn't it? So that hasn't happened yet. So they've been in for a year and have not done seemingly anything, I guess. Or not much.
There's the free school meals thing.
Okay, 60p a day. That's something.
Yeah, like that hasn't actually gone into action yet. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but I can't imagine they've made a dent, particularly in usage. They might not have increased massively because they have at least stopped some of the evisceration of the poor, but not by a lot. We had the fucking horrificness of heat banks over the winter, where old people could go and warm up for a bit before going back to their fucking igloo house.
We are, of course, concerned as well that the future cost increases of personal independence payment should be sustainable. And let me just look back on the record of that. PIP cost the then government in the year before the pandemic, 2019-20, at today's prices, £12 billion. Last year, it cost £22 billion. And we want the system to be sustainable for the future, and that is extremely important because...
Okay, tax people then. Don't tax rich people and pay for it. Sustainability doesn't just mean driving down costs, right? What about increasing revenue? Perhaps.
No, can't increase revenue. Can't do that.
Oh, sorry, no, fiscal rules. The fiscal rules that grow on trees and that are natural and therefore can't be changed. No one invented them. No, heaven forbid.
I mean, you've turned on so many things to the manifesto now. You might as well turn on this as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also, most people would be like, oh no, I'm glad they did. Yeah. Because now it means they don't have to, start killing puppies or something for the fucking gratification of two people who run the Daily Mail.
With large costs arising from ill health or disability do depend on PIP. They need to be confident that the support will be there in the future.
Luke Akehurst is not a natural colour of human. Nobody is that colour. It's a hot day, fine, but everyone else in the chamber is a normal hue. And then he's actually red. That's not normal. No, Homo sapiens aren't this.
As well. I'll give way to it.
And I especially Luke Akehurst, a man who every time he was ever attacked said, "Oh, you just hate disabled people," because he walks with a walking stick, right? Voted for this, obviously, enthusiastically, and he'd have voted for it in any shape because he's a wanker.
Minister for giving way. He's doing an admirable job of defending the farcical today. Can I ask him, last week there were £5 billion worth of savings.
Oh, the
today
chope.
There were £2.5 billion
Chope and shot.
A wild chope in its natural habitat. Good lord.
Literally half asleep, lying down with his arse falling off the chair.
Well, I'm glad we're going after the Skyvers. That's good. Awesome. Anyway, if again, people may remember, literally used his one-person veto on Friday afternoons to stop the upskirting bill, which was so embarrassing that Theresa May then brought that bill on as a government bill. That's how embarrassing that was. Still in Parliament, you know.
Savings, and then he came to the dispatch box and did 3 more U-turns. How much today, when he stands at that dispatch box, will these new measures save the taxpayer?
Minister.
We'll set out those figures in the usual way. But let me...
So you haven't got a fucking clue, is the point. So you've made this concession and you don't even know. Excellent work. Adults in the room, sensibles, the end of student politics. Wonderful.
On personal independence payment, let me make this point. The last government wanted to change personal independence payment from cash to vouchers. They wanted to take independence out of personal independence payment. We oppose them. It's been suggested that the benefit should be frozen, but the costs which the benefit is contributing to are continuing to rise along with all the other costs. So we oppose that as well. Some argue for means testing, but disability imposes costs irrespective of income. We reject all of those.
I mean, okay, but like that, literally the same can be made for being old. Being old means you're more susceptible to the cold. Mick Jagger is no less susceptible to the cold because he's a fucking multi-millionaire, whatever, right? So you can make that same argument against means testing the winter fuel payment, because he will still have to have more heating to not die.
Yep.
So, like, do you agree with the idea that means testing is stupid because these particular conditions are experienced by everyone regardless of how much money you have?
Well, to be fair, when it comes to the winter fuel U-turn, the U-turn was done in the way I said it should be, where you tax it back, right? Yeah. Like, but it's perfectly fine to do universalism with a tax taper, which they could theoretically do with things like PIP. But I don't think that there's enough rich people who are in receipt of PIP that would make it worth it. Unlike, of course, with the winter fuel payment, where there was a lot of rich people who received it.
Because we're an aging population, yeah.
So and because older people are just more likely to be rich. If you're still alive at that point, you're likely to be in good health if you're rich. If you've lived that long, you're more likely to have owned property, for example. Like, yeah.
And of course, a fantastic statistic which I learned this week, which applies to the US. I'm not quite sure about the UK, but it's a fantastic one nonetheless. In the year 2005, the average year of birth for a person buying a house was 1968. In the year 2025, so 20 years later, the average year of birth for a house buyer was 1968.
Literally, the generation that got everything.
So literally, like, it has, in 20 years, the average age of a house buyer has just increased by 20 years. Like, it's fucking mental.
Well, literally, yeah, because again, like, the people who were born in that year were the people who voted for Thatcher.
Yep.
To then pull the ladder up from the people who came after them.
Yep. Well, technically, because it's an average, it was probably the people before then. Because 1968 to 1980, they wouldn't have been. But people born in like 1963 or something, yeah, they all voted for Thatcher / Reagan evilness, yeah, and they've just kept all of the wealth that accrued from that.
Yeah, like someone quoted me for saying this on Reddit of someplace. Someone literally quoted me in their Reddit comment, because apparently at one point I said this line. I forget where it was. It's a great fucking line. I'm glad somebody remembered it rather than me. Like, the Boomer Project, the essence of the Boomer Project, whether or not that they wanted it to be, whether or not they intended it to be, regardless of whether they had any intention of it being so, it is the essence of it that the entirety of the wealth of the entirety of creation that had been created in the world up to that point should be kept forever in the hands of a single miserly generation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're raised by it's not even like you can say old people, oh, well, they fought in the war. These fuckers didn't. The people who fought in the war are mostly dead now. God bless them. But, like, the boomer people are literally the baby boom after the war. These people didn't do shit. They just absorbed the wealth of the bondsmen over the course of the entirety of human history. Thanks, guys. Woo! Like, it doesn't apply to all boomers, clearly. But if most of you all could, like, shuffle off this mortal coil, I don't think you'd be missed. Just saying.
Let me just make a comment about the concern that has been expressed, which doesn't arise now, given what I've announced, but about a two-tier system. And actually...
Well, there won't be a two... Look, as if you've just had to say that. I'm now going to make a comment about a thing that isn't even in the bill anymore.
Yeah.
You
Literally.
fucking clowns.
Literally.
Why didn't you scratch this bit out? Why have you said this? Fucking hell, man. This is tragic. Like, surely the good thing about changing it is there won't be a two-tier system now. It'll just be a shit system. Like, what the fuck?
A two-tier system is completely normal in Social Security. PIP replaced DLA in 2013,
come on.
but 500,000 adults are still on DLA today. That doesn't cause problems. Parallel running is normal, and actually it's often the fairest way to make a major change. I'll give way to Mike.
Also, I would like to say, I'd like to make a clarification, right? Is of course that there are plenty of boomers in my audience who I love, and I cherish you. I cherish the boomers in my audience.
I think
those...
I did add the caveat that not all boomers. I think
yeah,
that,
but like,
come on now.
Yeah, but I just wanna let the boomers in my chat know that there is loads of appreciation I have for the fact that you didn't turn out like the rest of them.
All right, have you satiated your Oilers yet? Come on now.
I mean, they're the ones with the money that can afford to donate to me.
Exactly. Like, if you want to dance for them, you do it on your own fucking time. All right?
But it's just so fucking rare, right? It's just, I mean, they're boomers. They've met the people who are
well, exactly. Yeah.
Like...
It's but because boomerism isn't just like, oh, it's people born in a certain time. There are plenty of young ass boomers, like fucking Ben Shapiro or fucking Crafty Wank. These are young boomers. It's a sort of state of mind of just pathetic bootlickery, you know.
Yeah, it's a real great mindset, isn't it? And the people in chat pointing out specifically how the people who essentially claim that they were the ones who fought in World War II and never fucking did, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Those kind of people, it gets especially galling when actually it was the principled greatest generation who fought in World War II, who created the society that boomers then fucking ripped to pieces.
Yeah, because they wanted to provide a better world for their kids, and unfortunately, it pampered them. And they've taken the entire time. Katie, I'm not having a go at your mom. I'm sure Scottish boomers are generally more based than English boomers. But English boomers are the kind of people you see in the fucking Lord's Long Room. You know what I mean? Like, that's the people I'm talking about.
To my right honourable friend, and I think members on this side of the House really do appreciate the concessions that...
Honestly, I like Gardner. Not because of his politics, but because he's the most outrageously camp straight man ever.
He is, isn't he?
Very much so.
He has already made. But when he's talking about whether this will be put in primary legislation, he must understand...
He's wearing a corduroy suit.
Members on this House will not be able to amend it if it is not in primary legislation. And that is a key concern when we don't know the outcome of the review.
Minister.
My honourable friend, my answer to him is the one that I gave earlier. We will need to await the outcome of the review, the assessment which is developed in the review, and to determine whether it will be implemented in primary or secondary legislation. So I want to make some further headway, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend, the member for York Central, in her opening speech, drew attention to the fact that she and I had known each other for a long time, and that's absolutely correct. And she urged us to listen to the voices of our constituents. So in February, someone I hadn't met before came to my constituency surgery. He explained to me that he lost his arm, age 6, in a road accident. And as a result, leaving school at 16, he could not find a job. He tried really hard, he couldn't find...
Oh no, I know they have aircon. I was pointing out his corduroy suit because it's drip.
Oh yeah, it's drippy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super drippy.
He is serving. the people of his constituency, clearly.
An employer that would take him. Until, in the year 2000, somebody told him about the New Deal for disabled people. And they did find him a job. He then worked for 23 years without a break, a whole series of different jobs. He brought up his children, he paid his taxes, until in October 2023, he was in an unsatisfactory 0-hours job, and he left it. And to his dismay, he hasn't been able to find a job since. He came to me as his local MP to ask where to get help again, like he had from the New Deal. But unfortunately, it was all scrapped by the Tories and the Lib Dems after 2010. We are determined now to provide proper support again. And my right honourable friend yesterday announced further early funding for that support. No, I'm not. I won't be giving way again. The Tories were never really interested in the disability employment gap. They had a brief flirtation in the 2015 general election campaign when David Cameron suddenly announced a target to halve the gap. Unfortunately, as soon as that general election had been safely won, that target was immediately scrapped.
Wow, imagine that, a party before an election making promises that they then go back on when they get into government. That's crazy.
And it's also very funny, right, is that Helen Whately in her statement said that, oh, well, they're going to put loads of red tape on businesses because they're going to have to be providing more in terms of reasonable adjustments to help disabled people get into work, right, which I think is a reasonable change. And both the Tories and Labour are potentially going to slash access to work, which is state funding for reasonable adjustments for disabled people to be able to get into work, right? They were both wanting to just make it so that disabled people would make it harder for them to work in loads of different ways.
And they reverted to type. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, we do care about disability employment. That is what we are making changes to address, and in this bill, we're making the changes to deliver.
Oh, did I see a wild Sir Desmond Swain?
There were some good.
The original.
I mean, I may hate this parliament for all the people in it, but there were some excellent names in this parliament.
Well, to be fair, Burko made the best of it, you know. Bambos, Charalambos.
Charalambos. Exactly, that was the name I had right in the front of my head. With good names.
Absolutely beautiful stuff. Yes, and of course we can't forget Mr. Peter Bone.
Mr. Peter Bone.
Mr. Peter Bone.
Peter Bone.
Anyway,
shall we yeah, go for it.
No, go on.
Should we watch Ash Sarkar debate Toby Young about Bob Villan? Should we talk about Bob Villan? Should we talk about the statement they put out? Should we talk about something that is?
Why would we watch Timu No Justice MTG talk to anyone? What's the point of that? No, I love Ash. She's alright. Yes. Okay. Yeah. We can watch whatever the fuck you want. This is all I had. I was like, yeah, we'll just do that. Fuck it. If you've got, I've been following the Bob Villan stuff. It's been amazing. I mean, as if Avon and Somerset Police have got nothing better to fucking do. They're now opening a criminal investigation into them. Why? Also, what's the investigation here exactly? You've seen the fucking video. Either send it to the Public Prosecution Service or don't.
Well, the funny thing is they say, well, it's incitement to violence, right? I'm not a legal expert, but my assumption is that incitement to violence, there has to be a reasonable, there has to be like some kind of reasonable assumption that violence might happen from that statement for its count as incitement, right? Is that something close to reality?
I believe so, yeah. But I mean, clearly he did incite violence. I don't know if you saw this, but I did have it bookmarked.
I was going to say, like, in what reality did the police genuinely think that there is some risk that people were going to jump on a plane, fly to Khan Yunis, and see him join the fucking Mujahideen brigades? Like, is that what they was expecting to be people to do in response to his death of the IDF chant?
Well, no, clearly he inspired these young Jewish men to attack the IDF and call them Hamas. Oh no, sorry, that's religious extremists in Israel attacking them, and literally calling the IDF Hamas.
Well, I think what they're doing is illegal in Israeli law, because these aren't settlements that they're trying to construct. These are outposts, right?
Yes.
So the difference in an outpost and a settlement is that settlements are ones that have been given credence by the Israeli government. They are supported by the Israeli government, and outposts are illegal both under international law and under Israeli law, because they are done ad hoc by non-endorsed settler movements.
Yeah.
So the IDF will sometimes will crack down on the illegal outposts, not because they care about Palestinians, but because the outpost people are doing things that are illegal under Israeli law.
But presumably now that the IDF are Hamas, does that mean that Bob Villan will get his way because the IDF will have to unalive themselves in order to kill Hamas?
I mean, we shall see. We shall see. Actually, 16-bit Manga wanted to jump on. I forgot about that, about welfare. Should we? I was.
Oh yeah,
completely forgot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me, Phil. Let's get you in. How did I message you last time, 16-bit? Did I message you in the Twitch DMs?
I have no idea.
Potentially.
I can't
I'm asking them in chat. I did a DM on Twitch. Okay, that makes everything nice and easy. I will look back through my other 16-bit Manga. There you go. Found you. There you go. There's the link.
Is that to this chat or is that to
this one?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't even think that the anti-IDF chants were the best bit of the Bob Villan set. The best bit of the Bob Villan set was the song they have, which is called "Heard You Want Your Country Back" and "Shut the fuck up."
Shut the fuck up. Yeah. Well, I had to find a separate. Hang on, I have to admit them, don't I? There's I had to find a separate gig where they performed that song in order to play it for people, because it wouldn't be on the iPlayer, because they took the entirety of his set down. They didn't even just take out the offensive bits. You cannot get any part of his set on the iPlayer. What's the point then? Why did you go there? Why do you broadcast this cultural event if you don't want any no stuff?
We've broadcast a punk artist and they've said something untoward. Wow.
Well, not just that,
incredible.
but like Stormzy literally said, fuck the government and fuck Boris, which, by the way, based back when he was, before he sold out, what a McDonald's fucking briefcase. But that was fine. You can attack the British government, but you can't attack the Israeli government? What? What fucking sense does that make?
Anyway, hello, Phil. Introduce yourself to chat.
My name is Phil. Basically, obviously, I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone in the government or general or anything like that, but I'm a decision maker for Universal Credit in regards to the health journey per se.
Okay.
So I guess like the main things is obviously today was like a complete mess. I will say some things I think that are good and some things that do worry me, and then some things that are just like practical advice, basically, right. I think, for people. So I think it's definitely good that we're not bottlenecking things through PIP. That was like my original big worry, really, because they would need a lot more caseworkers to go through PIP if everything had to go through PIP. And the issue with that is people will have to wait a really long time for outcomes, which is kind of similar to something that happened years ago when a lot of these outcomes and stuff was done by Capita at the time. Unfortunately, we've contracted to Capita to do like half of the assessments now, which was that was a Tory contract, not a Labour contract, but it did start this year. But anyway, and basically they fell so far behind that we had to come in and help them because people were dying waiting for benefit payments before they actually got them. So I'm glad that we're potentially going to avoid that situation again in the future by not putting everything through one benefit to get access to two. But I do think that my issue, I think, with these changes, don't get me wrong, I think it's good that overall general spending is going to go up. I do think it's very unfair to basically create two tiers of LCWRA now, where if you get sick in a few years' time, you're going to get 50%. And then if you're still sick now, it's eventually going to dwindle to the point where it's going to become meaningless. It's okay to look at things, I think, in sort of 5 years' time, 10 years' time, but some people will be claiming universal credit now in, like, their early 20s or whatever. Maybe they've got LCWRA. They could be on this potentially until they hit pension age in 60, it's like 60 whatever at the point. So you're talking like an extra potentially 40 to 50 years where eventually this LWRA payment is going to become meaningless. And realistically, is there anything further down the line that's going to replace that, except from just topping up the standard allowance, which will just be like pennies, basically. And I do kind of worry as well, that, especially like with the Tory response, where basically, as you were saying before, that they're trying to say like, oh, well, everybody knows that this needs to be changed. I think what they're setting up, which I think is kind of worrying, is basically saying like, look, we can stab you in the front now, or we can stab you in the back later. And that later will probably be tax rises. I do worry that potentially the consequence of reeling back on this, which I think is good that we did it, but I don't trust that they are doing it in the right way, is that they're going to make people pay for it by various other tax rises in the future. By saying, okay, you won't let us take the money out of disability, so therefore we're going to take the money out of something else, rather than doing more ethical taxing, basically. And I do actually think as well, I would not be surprised if in the future, them voting for this now, with the trust, apparently, that in the future they're going to come to some consensus on what it's actually going to look like, is a way for MPs to obfuscate responsibility. They're going to say, well, we didn't know what we were voting for when we voted for it. And I would never have voted for this if this is what it was going to be. And
that makes sense, yeah.
I think that's like a very unfair thing for people to deal with, like, in the future. I think what you said before about the access to work stuff is absolutely right. I think one thing the government could do is, because what they really want to do is push people into work, obviously. But the way Liz words it is like, oh, if you can work, then you must work. And must is not a suggestion. Must, as a word, is a command. And the problem is that there's no real jobs for people to go into. And now you're going to have people into the job market who have various conditions that are going to need to be catered for. Not just physical conditions, but also mental health conditions. You know, people with schizophrenia, people with psychosis, people who could very well have various things that really restrict them on a daily basis are now going to be thrust into a workplace where there's no jobs. I think The Guardian just posted as well that ChatGPT has actually caused the removal of a lot of entry positions in most workplaces. So
this
now,
was tweeted out by Max Robespierre as well. He mentioned this, and it is extra ironic that the government is trying to push people into work when the job market is being impacted by what large language models are doing to entry-level employment opportunities, when they are full-throatedly supporting the adoption of LLMs by these companies for the productivity increases, especially because they're being lobbied to do so by Tony Blair's Institute for Global Change, which just has a bunch of AI money funding it, right? There's a reason why Tony Blair is an AI evangelist, is because he wants to replace people's jobs with it to make money for his donors. And that's who is helping write policy for the government, where Peter Kyle, the technology minister, refused to put any kind of safeguards in place to stop the AI monstrosities and these LLMs from scraping the creative work of important artists in the UK, right? So this government is absolutely giving the AI companies carte blanche to ruin the economy for their own interests, with no expectations that they give back to the state in any way at all. And this is going to impact the job market for people who need to work that they're trying to force into work, right? It's so double-handed, double-sided.
Absolutely. And it's not even just the economy as well, but like they're doing it for services as well. Even with those in the DWP, they're constantly pushing AI, sort of upskilling, training sessions so that we can use AI more, use AI to write emails, AI to message each other, and eventually you get to a point where it's like, who's actually talking to who in these situations? And I've pushed back on this before when we've talked about more wide-scale changes for universal credit in the future. One of the big questions I asked the design people, I was like, if you keep pushing for AI, we're not going to get the same level of service that people expect. And this is a service that people have come to expect. to some degree. And all they said was, "Oh, there'll always be a human element," and it's like, what does that mean? You know, does it mean that someone has to go through like 10 layers of AI chat before they can get through a real person? Because, you know, some of the most vulnerable people in society are really going to struggle with that, and may need instant access to people. But in general as well, I was just going to say, I think with the access to work thing, that's good. When my mum was very, very young, she was disabled, physically disabled. They had schemes in place at the time where the government would pay companies to employ disabled people to cover the costs of anything that needs to happen to a building for it to be changed, anything that needs to happen to the workplaces. And yeah, we have reasonable adjustments, but I think usually in most sort of places that tends to be like, you know, like a high riser for your computer, something like that. Not necessarily guaranteeing someone has an entrance to a building that they can't otherwise access. And also, I think a lot of people need additional support. If you have various mental health conditions and you're being forced into a workspace where you're now going to have to deal with deadlines, pressures, expectations, you're going to be given responsibilities to manage potentially data and important stuff, there's going to need to be additional support alongside that. One, to make sure that the person's doing things right. Two, to make sure they're not deliberately doing things wrong because they don't quite, they can't quite like deal with the pressure of it. And then also to make sure that people are having a equal standing with everybody else in the office, and that someone's not just being sort of singled out in a space as well. All that stuff is like super important, and the Equality Act allows for that. It allows for positive action. It allows for companies to use funding to address inequality and barriers. And it's interesting that this bill talks about none of that. No sort of state help to actually access people into work, except from what these like job coaches, which just kind of sounds like another work coach. We already have this type of stuff anyway. Not only do we have work coaches, but we also have work and health programs. We have like a lot of voluntary things that get people into some type of experience. They're not really offering anything new to that. You know, the right to try is okay, but you already have the work allowance. You can already earn up to 16 hours a week, or at least, you know, the equivalent of that, without anything affecting your payments at all. If you're on some sort of like LCW or SWA. So I think leaning more to the access to work will probably help people better than something like a right to try, because I feel like that's already kind of a thing at this point with the work allowance. But yeah, the less.
I mean, when they were discussing this kind of thing, the civil service and things like that, do you know if there was any just thoughts of comparisons with other countries that have better levels of labour force participation than us, and looking at the way they do their systems differently? And was that ever taken on board, do you know, or was you not parley to that information?
I wasn't parley, but all I can say is that, like, from my experience at the very least, nobody knows anything. We in the department find out things at the same time everybody else does in the country. And sometimes I've had people who know things before I do. Because like they will be sat at home reading the news, watching things happen, and I will be obviously working and not paying attention to that. So sometimes people come to me and ask me about questions about stuff, and I'm like, I don't even know this is a thing. So yeah, the entire thing of this process has been completely shrouded in the same mystery that everyone else has had. And I've been trying to figure out how it could even feasibly work. And now we're in a situation where, thankfully, the PIP bit is gone. I think that's just like stupid. But I do worry of what the long-term goal is, because it's fine to have an uplift now. That uplift will eventually drop off unless you keep it going. And then the LWRA rate is going to drop with inflation. So what is the end goal for people who would still have LWRA in decades to come? Which kind of leads me to like my last sort of big thing, which is obviously like the things that qualify for this. So obviously the only people who get the current rate will be the people who get severe conditions. So this will apply from the 6th of April next year. To get a severe condition status for LWRA, you need to meet all 4 criteria. So one is that your condition will always be present. even if it's from birth or developed later on in life,
like a baby otter.
that it's based on current treatment and not future cures. That no matter how many times you'd be assessed, you'd get the same outcome. And that basically there's been enough medical examinations where there's just no doubt, basically. That's not going to apply for a lot of people on LWRA. So in the future, that's probably going to be the same thing. So I do worry for a lot of those people. I still think it's very, very unfair.
I mean, why would anyone trust that this government would do the right thing? That's the issue, right? No one can trust these people. No one can trust Liz Kendall unless literally you clean out the entire cabinet. Say maybe Ed Miliband. Maybe you keep Ed Miliband around, right? But everyone else has to go. I don't trust a single fucking one of them that they have the best interests of the people in this country at heart. I really don't. I just can't.
You don't think Morgan McSweeney has the best interests of disabled people at the very core of his existence? Really? Well, that's just correct. Yeah, obviously. Thank you, Vicky, for the donation. But you didn't need to. I did already see the message. To our guest, whose name I've already forgotten. Mango. Sorry, I knew it wasn't a normal name. Katie Marshall / Mad Cat Scotty in the chat does their own stream and would love to have you on.
Yeah. Okay. No problem.
So get in contact, Katie, would be, I suppose, the.
Twitch DMs is where I've contacted. Probably best to do that too. Also, thank you, My Left Eye, for the raid arenas. Welcoming YouTube viewers from My Left Eye. Please drop a subscription, and everyone on my end do the same thing. Please go and subscribe to My Left Eye. We stand.
Indeed.
Cool. Yeah, I'll bounce out. I'll just answer the one question in chat about legacy benefits changing to UC. To my understanding, anyone that is still on ESA, obviously, will have the migration to universal credit. That should be completed by March next year. And then the changes on LWA will start from the April. So in theory, anyone that's in the support group of ESA now shouldn't be affected by the changes. But yeah, basically, I can't tell you when to do it. I can't tell you if you should do it to the end or if you should make a claim right now. I don't know. I don't know what is the best thing to do. Just do whatever you feels right.
Yeah.
As people.
But as long as that migration isn't done by small boat.
Of course not.
Yeah. Because that would be illegal.
Because we've got enough of that already.
Indeed.
Alright, cool. Thank you very much.
No, see you later. Thanks for jumping on.
No worries. Bye.
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 Thank you, Doc. Yeah. What else were we going to look at? Something?
Bob, it was Ash Sarkar versus Toby Young on the political forecast.
Oh, okay. I'll type that in. Forecast. Yeah, there we go. Hate speech or free speech.
Why? Bob Villan and...
Whoa, chill the fuck out. Right, 1 second.
Is that they relate it to their own experience of
event and...
Oh, shit. What? I don't even know what the fuck I pressed there.
I love how they specifically used the picture of...
Part of the reason...
On the thumbnail, they used the same picture of Ash that I have on my thumbnails for when I go live, right? Nice. I have a cartoon version of that picture of Ash Sarkar on there, and my definitely not related to any video game IP parody thing that I have.
No.
Part of the reason why Bob Villan and also Kneecap feel so strongly a sense of solidarity to Palestine is that they relate it to their own experience of colonial...
No, it's just anti-Semitism. It's clearly just anti-Semitism. What else could it possibly be? Like Jeremy Corbyn.
And racism.
Is it always wrong to go on stage at any kind of event and call for the death of anyone or any institution?
I don't think he should be prosecuted, to be clear, but nevertheless, I think it was pretty unsavoury. And had it been another ethnic group he was attacking, I think the BBC would have pulled the plug.
Whoa, what ethnic group is IDF? Is that an ethnic group? I didn't realise that was...
They're a protected characteristic of genocide heirs.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tradition of their people that they just go around murdering. Like, how fucking ridiculously anti-Semitic is it to say, like, oh, you can't attack these people for doing the murder because that's anti-Semitism? I'm sorry, what part of Judaism is like, yay, mass murder?
Yeah, like
that
again,
itself it seems pretty fucking anti-Semitic to me.
Well, yeah, well, that's a really great sign at one of the Jewish Voice of Peace protests in America, which literally said genocide is not a Jewish value, and I'm like, damn right it isn't. It never has been. People who are trying to equate these things together, whether they are doing it to attack Israel or to defend Israel, these people are not anyone that you should listen to about anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there are plenty of people, right? There are plenty of people. I'm not going to shy away from doing this. I know ContraPoints has got itself into some hot water on Twitter about this, but whatever. I think, for once, I'm actually going to agree with her on this particular issue on this stuff, is that left anti-Semitism is a real problem. It's sort of like as big a problem as everyone makes it out to be, and it's certainly dwarfed by the problems of right-wing anti-Semitism. But there are plenty of left-wingers who now have been convinced, probably a lot partially to blame by Israel and Zionists' conflation of these things, they've been convinced that Israel does what it does because it's Jewish. And I'm just like, these people are anti-Semitic and you must call them out, right? But at least some of the blame here has to be put upon the people on the other side who did the same thing.
True. But also...
You said you have to support Israel or you're anti-Semitic. You have to support the genocide unless you hate Jewish people, right? Which means, well, are the genocide and Jewish people completely linked then? Well, I guess that's just creating a hotbed for more anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I was about to say, that would make more people anti-Semitic, because they're like, well, I don't like genocide, so if genocide is like a core part of Judaism, that makes Judaism look really fucking
Ladies and gentlemen, we got
But of course, it isn't. We know it fucking isn't.
No.
Thank you, 16-Bit Mango, who I presume is that person. Or someone claiming to be that person. I don't know. Could be anyone. Probably Hamas. For legal reasons, they're not a member of Hamas.
Welcome to The Forecast. It's the controversial performance that's dominated the headlines and sparked massive debate and controversy. Punk duo Bob Villain chanted death to the IDF to a crowd of thousands.
But, like, just think about this for a second. Bob Villain is a band that no one had heard of a week ago.
I had.
Well, no, okay, yeah, dickheads like me and you had heard of them, because that's the thing, right? But, like, your average person had never heard of them. Certainly no senator in the United States had ever heard of them. And now everyone's got an opinion of them, and they're being mentioned on every fucking news channel in the world.
I mean, the funniest thing for me was that people keep talking about, oh, well, isn't it terrible what they said they're inciting anti-Semitism? I'm like, it did not take very much for the rest of the crowd to chant along with him, did it? Like, you've got to ask yourself, maybe there is an actual public sentiment problem here. Maybe there's an actual problem with the IDF's, I don't know, their PR, potentially? People are so easily happy to chant along in the same way that people would in the Global South to the chant of death to America.
Yeah, well, I did a bit yesterday about responding to James O'Brien's briefcasing on this. And obviously he was like, oh, they're holding back the plight of the Palestinian cause. And I'm like, yeah, of course, being centrist and incrementalist is definitely going to get the Palestinian people freedom sometime soon. I'm sure, James. But anyway, James O'Brien's nonsense about this. Oh, fuck, I've totally forgot. I keep sidetracking myself with nonsense, and I've forgotten the point I was going to make. What did you say that made me say the thing? Remind me.
That the sentiment is so poor for the IDF.
That was it. Yes, yeah. So, he was going on about, like, extreme Zionists will be rubbing their hands together that Bob Villain said this. Not Bob Dylan, that's a different thing. Bob Villain said this thing, right? And I'm like, no, they're not. Zionists are going fucking crazy. Zionists are absolutely losing their shit. Because what they saw there was, like you say, not just a punk rock band saying a thing, because that's always happened, but they saw a field of thousands and thousands of young people rejecting the Hasbro bullshit. What they saw was the future of Britain, and to an extent the future of Western discourse, being moulded in a direction that is completely antithetical to their entire existence. They saw their messaging crumble before their eyes. That's why they're out here so spiteful. That's why they've gotten the talent agency to drop them. Instantly, the American Foreign Office, or whatever the fuck they call it, State Department, got rid of the visa and went back on decades of prior thing of not mentioning the specific reasons why you're doing a visa removal. They just remove it and that's that. It's just announced and that's it. Whereas they went out and specifically did Israeli propaganda, basically, to try and stamp down on this as much as possible. Ironically, of course, Streisand affecting Bob Vylan to be the most fucking well thought or most well considered band on earth right now, which is ridiculous. Because again, a week ago, I guarantee no one who watches Channel 4 fucking knew about this. And
Yeah,
yet here they are.
100%. What's
And
interesting as well.
You know who I feel bad for? Kneecap. Because they've had their thunder stolen. They were supposed to be the big act, and Bob Vylan went, "Don't start with me, bitch. I've got the microphone. I'm going to say this shit live on BBC." And now no one's talking about Kneecap anymore.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that you talking about how this is the future kind of mood swing in the West, like the Western thought towards Israel is being changed, right?
Yeah.
I saw really interesting with this Zionist comedian from America, like saying what other chants could have been sung at Glastonbury. It was like this shitty fucking TikTok video, right? But it was really interesting kind of thought exercise about how Zionists perceive themselves and how they perceive the relationship. Insofar as they were essentially saying in their bit, right, is that we're gonna the goal is for the societies of the West to turn against themselves. And I'm like, well, if you think that the basis of Western society is the support for colonial ethno-nationalism, right? And that you cannot have Western societies without that, then you're telling on yourself. I mean, ironically, it's basically the same as the leftist position, where most leftists believe that Western society is predicated on the unequal exchange that was created by colonialism and colonial suppression, right?
Yeah.
And the European ethno-nationalism is something that is part of kind of the public psyche. It's just that we think it's bad and you think it's good, right?
Yes.
By all means, admit that that you personally think that Western society is predicated on support for Israel. Yeah, but you said it, buddy.
Yep.
You fucking said it, mate. Except
Yep.
it's not even society anymore. It's just only our political leaders.
It's literally just
society
the political
rejects
leaders.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you look across
Although-
the West, even in America, where it was like absolutely sacrosanct that you couldn't say anything about Israel, we've seen, the youth of America rising up and saying no. Now they've been violently cracked down upon, and we'll see how that works out. But we already saw how that worked out with Vietnam. Not well in the long run. Not for the people in charge, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing. There were some other things in this little TikTok skit that they did, which was just that they essentially tried to say that if you support Palestinians, then you must support Palestine, right? You want to do suicide bombings because you said globalize the Intifada. I'm like, well, there weren't any suicide bombings during the first Intifada, so that's just wrong. And they're saying, you're going to make women cover their hair and you're going to turn society backwards. And I'm like, well, no, we just want the genocide to stop. Because fundamentally, a bunch of the Western support for Israel basically now, because we all see what it is in reality. If you're one of the kind of fucking psychotic motherfuckers who still supports Israel after all of this, the only kind of justification I can think, which is that you believe that Israel's job is to be the bulwark against what you believe to be barbarians coming from the East. That's genuinely how they view these people. And that's why they find so much carry for the claims that, why do you support Palestine? They don't share your values. We should be allowed to kill them because they're backwards. Their culture is backwards, which is obviously very colonial in nature, right? You can justify the butchery of the colonized peoples because they're barbarians, right?
Yeah.
Which is, it just shows you how these people think. They are white nationalists. They're white supremacists who believe that the peoples of other countries who you feel the culture is superior, you can justify mass murder and genocide of these people, but you can use their culture and their beliefs and their practices as justification for this, just as the colonists did all those years ago.
Well, exactly, but that also doesn't work out well for the Zionists, frankly, because if we're going to say that your cultural attitudes are a reason to commit genocide, I personally don't like having pro-rape riots in places. I think that is culturally pretty fucking degenerate. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second you should go around killing anybody on the basis of, anything. Killing is generally bad. But, You don't get to claim to be the morally superior culture here when you have pro-rape riots, when you have your parliament discussing the degree to which it's okay to rape and murder unarmed civilian prisoners. You just don't. I'm sorry. That's not an argument you can win.
And it's just so weird because, you know, it's just Israel exists in a time period that it shouldn't exist in anymore, because it exists in the world of colonial states when post World War II that stuff went away, right?
Yeah, it sort of feels like, well, I mean, apartheid South Africa in the kind of 80s. Like it's outlived that period that birthed it, to a degree that like every other state has fallen that was like that, but there's just this weird little outcrop because it's the only friend America has in the region, and that's it.
Well, exactly. It's why the far right love it so much. There's this nostalgia for the glory of empire that they live through vicariously via Israel. Of course, it's also their model ethno-state, right? Yeah. It's their model ethno-state for two reasons. First of all, so they can copy that ethno-state model and have racially homogenous communities back in the West, which they fundamentally support because they're fascists. But also, they're fascists who hate Jews. Right?
Yes.
So they will pretend to be fellow Semites to justify the idea that all Jewish people should leave the West and go back to their ethnic homeland. A concept that is fucking stupid, right? Let's just put like brass tacks down. There is no such thing as an ethnic homeland. Just because your race experienced some level of ethnogenesis in a certain region of the world does not mean that that must be where you must always live forever and you have a divine right to always live and create states on. What the fuck is this nonsense? There's no such thing as an ethnic homeland.
Or we can all just go back to Tanzania and say, well, that's where humanity came from. My ancestors came from the Rift Valley. I think I'll just be taking this land now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, like someone's making this claim on Twitter. Oh well, Israel's a decolonization project because they're their ethnic homeland. I'm like, well, like the fucking like Rajasthan by that metric is the ethnic homeland of the Romani people.
Yes,
but that wouldn't give the Romani people of Europe, who again suffered under the Nazis in a similar way to the Jewish people did, obviously not to the same extent, but with the same kind of barbarity that the Nazis inflicted on Jewish people during the Shoah, right? They wouldn't give Romani people the justification to go to Rajasthan, fucking ethnically cleanse all of the Hindi or Dravidian people who live there currently to create a Romani ethno-state, but they justify because we need protection from future Nazism in Europe. Like, you knew you wouldn't be able to do that. Why it's okay for Israel, but you can't make that justification for Romani people. It's ridiculous. It all falls apart when you compare it to literally any other ethnic group that now no longer lives in where people who are silly would characterize as being their quote-unquote ethnic homeland.
Indeed. Thank you, Jean-Luc Picard, with a gifted membership. Much love to you, friend.
And thank you, Graham Turner, for the £5 super chat. Is singing Remember the 5th Is singing Remember the 5th of November hate speech or against the protected class of politicians?
Well, what I want to know is where is the Avon and Somerset Police Department's investigation into Morrissey for his repeated calls of violence in terms of hanging the DJ, hang the DJ, which he's been repeatedly singing now for 40 years.
Crucially, an audience of millions as their Glastonbury performance was aired live on the BBC. The backlash was immediate, with some calling it an essential act of artistic protest, while others saw it as crossing a line, a deeply offensive and anti-Semitic sentiment.
Because, of course, murder is a part of being Jewish, somehow?
And even then, the IDF isn't even Jewish. It's Israeli, right? And they keep telling us, oh, no, Israel isn't an ethno-state. It's a pluralistic society full of Arab and Druze and Circassian minorities. They even serve in the IDF. Yep. Oh, they do they? Oh, they do. Oh, that's right. They do serve it. So we're attacking all of those other ethnicities as well, and not just the members of the Israeli military who are Jewish, are they? So it's one or the other, right? Either it's a pluralistic society, in which case attacking its institutions has nothing to do with the majority ethnic group, or they're entirely the basis of the Jewish people in the international community, in which case that's actually anti-Semitic because you're conflating, under the IHRA definition, the bad things that Israel does with the wider Jewish community.
Exactly, yeah. But also, like, the idea that attacking a military organisation and saying death to them, look, it's a military organisation. Like, people die in military organisations all the fucking time.
Yeah, like
it's
if
not
you
the
want,
same. Calling for violence against civilians is one thing, but you're calling for violence, potentially at least, against a military organisation, which, like, yeah, that's how fucking war works. What did you think
yeah,
it
exactly.
was?
I mean, I would love there to be a peaceful solution. I am desperate for a peaceful solution. I am pleading and willing for a peaceful solution. But if that doesn't arise, the only way for Palestinians to be able to break the siege and to maintain justice is through military means.
Yeah.
And as people keep telling us, right, people die in wars. The pro-Zionists keep telling us that civilians die in wars. Civilians continually die in wars. Right? That's fine. It's justifiable when Israel do it.
But apparently
the
they
idea that
also
Palestinians can kill Israeli soldiers, the same soldiers that are administering a belligerent occupation, an illegal belligerent occupation at that, right? That's beyond the pale if these people die in a war. Oh, 7 Israeli soldiers have died. It's so tragic. I'm not going to fucking colonizer down, bitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm sorry, like that's what it is. Although I want to go back to that point I made about the ethnicity of the army, right? What's important is that it would not matter, even if only Jewish people in Israel served in the IDF, even if it was just the Jewish people who served in the IDF, it would still not be anti-Semitism to sing death to the IDF. It wouldn't be anti-Semitism even then, because it is their material relationship with the occupation that matters rather than the ethnic makeup. All I'm doing though is pointing out the hypocrisy of the people who look and try and say that Israel isn't an ethno state when it is. Jewish people have more rights than the others. It is explicitly a Jewish state. They do not allow citizenship for Palestinians specifically because they want to maintain their ethnic majority status because it's an ethno state. That's why it is. It's nothing to do with whether they're Arab or Jewish minorities at all. They can exist and it's still an ethno state, right? But what I'm doing is showing you that there is no consistency in their position when it comes to the reality of what the IDF is.
Yeah, exactly. And as Bob Villan pointed out in one of they've put out a couple of statements since the thing, that what they're calling for is the dismantlement of a colonialist, imperialist military force. They're not calling for the murder of anybody.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, might be to an extent, let's say, advised by their lawyers to say, because that then makes the job of their lawyers much easier than if they just came out and said, yeah, kill them all, which would be, rough. But also, I think, is a perfectly reasonable interpretation of what was being said there. Because, again, he didn't say kill members of the IDF. He said death to the IDF, which is an institution.
Yeah, exactly. Just like when people in the global south chant death to America, they don't mean kill every single citizen of America. They mean kill anyone in America. They mean the end, the dissolution of the American empire, of the American imperial unipolar control of the world, right? Because that system, that institution that's been set up ever since American hegemony became normalized post-World War II, all it's led to is death and destruction and regime change and interference in their lives and the deaths of their friends and the destabilization of their countries,
Yeah, an entire continent wrought asunder for the benefit of the United Fruit Company. Basically,
exactly. Yeah. That's what death to America means. It doesn't. And
it's difficult to sum. It's difficult to sum up that much more nuanced point in a kind of pithy chant. Well,
exactly. I mean, obviously, I will caveat and say there probably are some people who, when they say death to America, they mean kill at least some members of the Americans. Like, I'm sure plenty of members of Al Qaeda, plenty of members of the Hamburg cell. I'm pretty sure many of them chanted death to America, and they mean kill Americans because they did 9/11, right? Yeah. So I'm sure there's some people who are genuine extremists who are psychotic enough to do that, right? But the broader sentiment is not that.
But 9/11, just like this, when America bombed Iran, and they said, we didn't bomb Iran, we bombed the Iranian regime. And you say, well, okay, the 9/11 attackers didn't attack America then, did they? They attacked the American regime. Like, you can play all these silly word games with this if you want to. But it's... the imperialism, fundamentally, is just dishonest to its very core. Like, there was, at least back when it was like, I don't know, the kind of scramble for Africa, it was pretty nakedly obvious what was going on there. And they were just like, oh no, it's good because these people are savages, so we're just going to take over and civilise and stuff. Whereas now it's just dishonest to its very core, because they realise they can't, in the free marketplace of ideas, win anything, because what they do is fucking disgusting.
Screen warnings issued by the BBC about discriminatory language during this set were not good enough. That's what one minister said. Today, we're joined by Toby Young, a journalist and commentator, and Ash Sarkar, who was at the performance, a political activist and writer, to discuss...
Just for clarification, the exact state... Thank you for the link to this. The exact thing they said was... so this was from Bob Villan. We are not for the death of Jews, Arabs, or any other group, race of people. We are for the dismantling of a violent military machine. Yeah. That's perfectly reasonable.
And the thing is that even then, people are calling them anti-Semites for clarifying this way. It says, oh, without the IDF, there's no way of defending Jewish people in Israel. I'm like, well...
Yeah, there is.
It would be absolutely reasonable for them to defend themselves, but that's not what the IDF does.
No. That's why a lot of people refer to this as the IOF. Because they're
there
not
to
a
administer
defensive force.
yeah, exactly. They're there to administer a belligerent occupation. I like, a lot of this would go away if the occupation did.
Yeah.
That's the reaction to the performance, the BBC's decision to broadcast it, and what this all means for free speech and creative freedom. Welcome to you both. Thanks for coming on the forecast. So let's start with this, first of all, an assertion. Is it always wrong to go on stage at any kind of event and call for the death of anyone or any institution? First you, Ash.
Whoa, hang on, whoa. Death of any person or institution. Snuck that one in there. Those are rather different things, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, no to the former, yes to the latter. It absolutely is acceptable to call for the end of an institution, for the dissolution of an institution. Right. On that point, minor tangent. People keep saying, "Oh well, the Palestinian movement wants to destroy Israel." I'm like, no, states don't get destroyed; they get dissolved.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, we want the dissolution of the state of Israel. No state has a right to exist, at least not colonial ones. Right. Yeah, we do. But they say destroy specifically to invoke images in people's minds of actual destruction of the physical assets that are currently within the polity of Israel, which no one is asking for. I mean, maybe some extremists are asking for. No one normal person is asking for this. Normal people are asking for a dissolution of the state, of the polity, and a replacement of a binational or a secular democracy that encompasses all of historic Palestine. People can live in the Holy Land without there being ethnic stipulations on who lives where, right?
Yeah.
Pipe dream, maybe. Maybe you call that a pipe dream, whatever. I don't care about your criticisms of that, but it's the morality behind that call. But they specifically want you to think, and that's why they keep saying, well, what happens to the Jews in Israel if Israel goes? Nothing happens to them. They live in the new state. Even Osama Hamdan, right? A member of the Hamas Politburo, when speaking in an Arabic language interview, so it's not like propaganda for the West, it was in Arabic, right? Said, we welcome anybody who wants to live in the new Palestinian state, as long as you're happy to follow our laws, it doesn't matter ethnicity or religion.
Yeah.
Like, they've already said they're happy for people to live wherever they are, right? They just want to enter the Zionist entity. I don't agree with
So this is the nonsense when they go on about, like, oh, from the river to the sea means you're going to wipe out all of the Jews. No. From the river to the sea encompasses everybody. I want there to be one nation there where everyone can live. Jew, Arab, Christian, Muslim, atheist, Zoroastrian. I don't give a fuck. You all get to just live there. That's it. I'm not calling for the death of anybody. I specifically want the opposite of that. I want no deaths. I don't want there to be any fucking bombings, any killings, especially when people are queuing up for fucking food. Like,
exactly.
It's madness. 100%. And so the people actually doing a genocide, accusing other people of wanting to do a genocide because they chanted a thing. Like, shut the fuck up. How dare you? Like, you've had fucking IDF soldiers literally come out and say, I know we've been directly ordered to kill people. And they're like, oh, well, clearly they're Hamas then.
Well, that's the thing, right, is that everyone keeps going on like, well, Hamas were told to kill civilians. I'm like, well, the IDF have now. We admitted that they had to as well. Okay, so are they're as bad as each other now, aren't they? Yeah, sure. You agree they're as bad as each other? And if they don't agree with you, right, they don't agree with you, it's fundamentally because they're racist. It's fundamentally because they believe that killing civilians is okay as long as you're white.
Well, I mean, all I'll say is...
Or white-coded, sorry. White-coded.
Hamas are a prescribed terrorist group, so why the fuck aren't the IDF? They're clearly doing the same thing that Hamas are fucking doing, on a much larger scale. But, Palestine Action are soon to become a terrorist organisation, so that's cool.
Even the UN have called out Yvette Cooper of this. There was a UN statement warning the UK not to do it. Fucking crazy stuff. That's how far this has escalated.
Insane shit, yeah. But again, Yvette Cooper may have to prescribe Yvette Cooper. as a terrorist organisation soon. So that would be fun. Anyway, thank you, James Holmes, for gifting 5 memberships. Much love.
Thank you. I also want to just go point out, John the Brace in chat says the Novara position seems to allow Israel to exist as a part of a two-state solution. I don't think that there is any optical gain in being hardline about one state over two state. I think the easiest position to sell to anybody is that any solution is fine as long as the killing stops. I think that's the only way you're going to convince people.
Yeah.
What you want to do is say that you would prefer a one-state solution, because I do prefer a one-state solution, and I think that'll be the best one to have the most justice, right? But fundamentally, we want the killing to stop.
I don't even think it's a matter of wanting one thing or another. I don't think a two-state solution is remotely possible, and I don't just mean because it's a difficult situation. I mean literally, the state of Israel have made it impossible. The fact that America has its embassy in Jerusalem makes East Jerusalem as the capital of a contiguous Palestinian nation basically impossible.
Yeah.
So, like, realistically, the only thing that could happen is a one-state solution.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically where we're coming into at the moment, right? We just have some Bantustans of stateless people surrounded by an ever-increasing and encroaching Israeli state, encroaching into Syria and into Lebanon, probably eventually into Jordan and the Sinai as well. But, like, I think that what Zohran Mamdani showed is that there are very easy arguments that you can make to win without being maximalist in your position, right? Saying something like, well, Israel can exist as long as it has equal rights is the best way of undermining apartheid, right? In that you don't get caught up in these arguments about states' rights when we all know that's bullshit, but people aren't listening to your arguments about that. But people do in America fundamentally believe in equal rights. And as long as you can say, well, if you oppose me saying equal rights as opposed to Jewish state, then you undermine your own principles. It's super easy rhetorically to win. And that's why I think that abandoning maximalism over what solution you want is the best way of winning people over.
First thing I would say is that saying death to the IDF when that army is currently committing a genocide, when there are recorded and verified instances of them firing on unarmed civilians while they're waiting for aid to be distributed, recorded instances of gang rape, children being admitted to hospital with sniper wounds to the skull, I think it is an appropriate expression of rage and disgust.
So in this particular instance, you say, because of what the IDF has done in Gaza, you would say shouting or leading a chorus, death to the IDF is legit.
That's someone wanted to do a supercut of all of these. Hang on, what happened there? Only have 15 minutes to oh, for fuck's sake.
Well, it shouldn't take too long to get to the meat of the discussion. It's going quite late anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, someone needs to do a supercut of all these newsreaders with posh accents saying death to the IDF. Yeah. Again, they're saying it, not me.
But also,
that's what you're saying.
I think it's worth clarifying that he's saying, or you think it's legit. That's what you're saying. But then specifically on the grounds of what you said before, of the death of the institution, right? The end of the institution, the dissolution of the institution, not the people themselves, right? If the context is we want the death of the IDF as a thing, not the people within it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The same way it is completely legitimate to say destroy ISIS. These are organizations founded on violence, terrorizing innocent civilians.
Yeah. Also, so many people in the Western commentariat were basically saying like, oh, well, the Russians are basically these fucking Slavic, Asiatic monsters. We can kill them. It doesn't matter. Death to the Russia, right? They were doing this shit during the entirely illegal invasion and occupation of eastern Ukraine by the Russian army. And you could say, I mean, I don't know if you could necessarily say death to Russia, but you could say death to the Russian army.
Death to the Wagner Group.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people, yeah. Think of the fucking NAFO memes. And the fact that you've got literally all across social media now, you can watch live stream footage from drones dropping bombs on like individual Russian soldiers. And that's fine. There's even in Somerset police are not fucking investigating that. The Home Office aren't prescribing these organisations. That's absolutely fine.
And what's funny, right, is you get no coverage of the fact that Israeli politicians aren't saying death to the Al-Qassam brigades. They're saying death to Arabs.
Yeah.
Israeli politicians say death to Arabs, right? Yeah. Maccabi Tel Aviv fans walk through the streets of Amsterdam saying death to Arabs.
Yep. And then get their shit kicked in. Lol.
No, but that was a pogrom, Kev.
It's a pogrom. I'm going to fly them home. Fuck off.
And it is always appropriate to express one's opposition to that. I don't think that it was anti-Semitic, and nor do I think it was inappropriate for a punk band, when this is a genre associated with pushing the boundaries, to lead a chant at what's effectively a concert.
Okay. Toby, what's your reaction?
Well, I think Ash and I profoundly disagree about the military operation in Gaza, which I believe...
Yeah, you are a ghoul. Yeah, absolutely.
...is a legitimate act of self-defense on Israel's part, and I thought it was particularly insensitive to chant death, death to the IDF at a music festival, given that something like 350 people were killed at the Nova Music Festival.
How many of those people were killed by the IDF?
And also, like, how many of them were members of the IDF? Like, none of those people were members of the IDF. Like, who cares? This is irrelevant. Like, just because that was a music festival and this is a music festival, this is not in any way to do with the price of fish.
No.
Like, what are you talking about?
No, but they just want to conjure up, like, more like, you know, I don't even know, Zionist porn, I guess, of like, oh, they played titty football at the festival. That nonsense, you know.
On October 7th, 2 years ago. But I think parking the question about whether we think Israel's military response to that massacre...
Well, what do you mean parking that? What do you mean? There's no parking anything. Well, let's take out the pertinent, worthwhile thing that's being reacted to and just, take it in completely without any context whatsoever? Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's pretend that Bob Villain are actually fish made out of cardboard. If we're just going to change the fucking rules, like, what do you mean? He's responding to what he considers to be an illegal and immoral set of actions on behalf of the IDF, and starting a chant on that basis. If you take away that context, it doesn't make any fucking sense at all.
No, exactly.
Is legitimate or not. I think it's helpful to distinguish between two things. First of all, whether we think Bob Villain should be prosecuted for leading that chant, and whether it's actually unlawful for them to have led that chant. So whether, in fact, they could be prosecuted under UK law. On the first question, I think Ash and I agree. I don't think they should be prosecuted any more than I think Lucy Connolly should have been prosecuted for the tweet she posted in the immediate aftermath of...
A little bit different, yeah.
Yes, they are different, right? Because as far as I am concerned, if I was writing the laws, legal culpability for incitement would be upon reasonable assumption that it could lead to violence, which, of course, Lucy Connolly's obviously could have done, because people did go and burn down the hotel after she said people should burn down hotels, right? Case closed, Colombo, she pled guilty. Whereas when it comes to this, like, there's no actual reality in which members of the crowd at there's no actual reality in which members of the crowd at Glastonbury are going to hop on a plane, go to Israel, don the garb of the Al-Qassam brigades, and start shooting at members of the IDF, right? That's not in any way going to happen at all. Whereas the Lucy Connolly stuff was far more actually likely to lead to anything. And again, of course, these were different in terms of the targets. One was an institution, one was people.
Indeed.
Of the Southport attacks. I think the test to apply here, the test we should be applying, is the Brandenburg test, which was established in a Supreme Court case called Brandenburg versus Ohio. And the Brandenburg test essentially says that unless what you've said is going to lead to imminent lawless action, then it should be protected speech, protected by the First Amendment.
Okay, firstly, we don't have an amendment. We don't even have a fucking written constitution. But secondly, I think even under that guise, Lucy Connolly would be prosecutable. Because she did say a thing that then went and happened. Like, people did act upon those kinds of threats, yeah.
I think you're right. I think I pretty much agree with your position. Like, someone got mad at my comments going, oh, I thought you were the speech means no, you don't get freedom from consequences for bad speech. I'm like, well, yeah, I've never changed my opinion on that, right?
Yeah.
I've laid out my position before. I think where my position lies on Lucy Connolly is that maybe it was a mistake, maybe it was an ill-advised tweet, and maybe she didn't think it would lead to the level of incitement that it did. I think that she should have been prosecuted. I think the sentence was too harsh. I think that's where I would draw the line
Probably,
here. I think
yeah,
that
yeah.
I think a community order is more worthwhile than prison.
it's-
But I do think
but-
she should have been convicted. Though. She should be
Yeah.
guilty.
But that
right?
happens, right? In times of extremists, they do tend to throw the book at people to try and, like, literally just get their house back in order. Do you remember the 2011 riots, was it? Where people were being, absurd maximum sentences were being thrown at people. That happens. And you sort of know that. And so, ultimately, if you get the rough end of the stick, I don't think you can really complain too much. You
For
know?
example, I'm going to make another very recent comparison, right? I think that Kneecap saying "kill your local MP" is far more likely to be incitement, and probably is incitement, than
Because we have actually seen people kill MPs in the relatively
we've had
recent
two MPs
past.
actually killed. Stephen Timms, the one we were watching earlier, he was literally stabbed in broad daylight, and there were multiple members of Parliament who've had murder plots against them foiled by special officers.
Indeed, including the Prime Minister. We won't go into it. It's a complicated matter involving Eastern European people. Anyway.
And I don't think chanting death, death to the IDF is going to lead to imminent lawless action. So I think that speech should be protected, and we should have something like the First Amendment in the UK to protect it.
We'd need to have a written constitution in order to be amended.
I mean, people are calling for it.
Well, I've got no problem. Yeah, okay, cool. But try getting a written amendment through a modern parliament. It was a lot easier when it was fucking 20 white guys in powdered wigs in one room. All going, we agree. How can anyone possibly misinterpret the right to bear arms? We mean the right to have two arms that are ripped from a bear. Obviously.
A separate question, which is, well, is it nonetheless prosecutable under UK law? And that's, I think, quite a complicated question. I've been trying to kind of get my head around that today, and we can get into that if you want to get into it, Matt.
We've heard that the police is now investigating the band to see if they're going to file criminal charges. We also just heard that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in the US has cancelled their visas. They were going to go to the US on tour then.
It's so fun that the fucking Vance came across and was lecturing Europe about free speech. You cheeky bastard. Fuck off.
So funny to me.
Now we're not going to be able to do that because their visas have been cancelled. And of course, inevitably...
It doesn't even matter because we already know that the downloads of Bob Vinyl's music have massively increased in the United States, and they didn't have to go on tour.
Yeah.
So already the thing that they were hoping from that tour has more than happened. So you actually doesn't make any difference.
This discussion will lead to what the IDF is actually doing in Gaza, which is a hugely controversial subject that we've been dealing with.
But thankfully, the United States government have stood up against foreign people who entering the United States who engage in a rhetoric that leads to direct violence. Welcome in fucking Yoav Gallant for another tea at fucking Mar-a-Lago instead. Fuck off.
With on our program and our podcast, almost on a daily basis. But before we go to that, just on the specific issue of the BBC, if I may, I mean, they didn't broadcast Kneecap. They did broadcast this. They put out a health warning that clearly wasn't strong enough. Was this just an example of the BBC kind of not knowing what its own policy is, of being perhaps incompetent, or did they do the right thing? First to you, Ash.
I think the BBC has, on repeated instances, displayed an appalling lack of moral fortitude when it comes to freedom of expression, whether that's artistic or journalistic. There is
not just that, but the BBC, the organisation that cocooned several pedophiles from any semblance of justice for decades and decades, allowing thousands of children to be raped by them, is now the moral arbiter of what we can and can't hear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know that you've got a leg to stand on morally, BBC.
No, yeah.
Sorry, if you dealt with Jimmy Savile, I might take you seriously, but you fucking didn't.
documentary, which I believe Channel 4 is now going to air, about the experiences of medics in Gaza who are under attack. The BBC, for some reason, decided they didn't want to show it, despite it being a factual documentary. And when you look at their coverage, there was a recent study released by the Centre for Media Monitoring, which showed that the coverage of Israeli deaths gets 33 times more attention on the BBC than coverage of Palestinian deaths, despite Palestinian deaths outnumbering Israeli deaths.
Oh, so we've got the ratio of dead sons of bitches now.
We do have
We know-
the official ratio.
We know the conversion rate. Okay, good. Someone get in touch with Bassem Youssef. We've got an answer for him. 3 years, 18 months later. Yeah.
About 34 times. Similarly, when reporting on what I believe is a genocidal war in Gaza, only 0.5% of the reports mention that there was violence and occupation by the IDF, by the Israeli government, before October 7th, compared to the fact that in these...
But there wasn't, because nothing happened. History started on October 7th.
Yep,
That's it.
I emerged from the ether, right? I emerged from the ether, aged 31.
You don't look a day over 28.
Exactly, and that was it. That was it, right? History did not exist before then.
True.
Reports, 40% of them start by talking about October 7th. So I think that this is an extension of that cowardice and that political bias of the BBC.
I mean, but what you're referring to are these very substantive points that, again, we've been, debating, really ad nauseum since the beginning of this latest war after October the 7th. But, did the band undermine their serious arguments, if they have any, about what's going on with that particular chant? Because what people are talking about is the chant and not
the serious argument. They're a punk band.
Yeah.
This isn't the fucking Agora. This is Glastonbury.
No, it is. This is the modern talking shop. Yeah. No, I mean, to be fair, look, when you say undermine the thing, the fact that this is being talked about, the fact that this is now atop of the news agenda in a way that it wasn't a week ago, even though they were still doing flower massacres every fucking week. And so, look, I understand why the artists in question say we're not the story, the Gaza is the story, etc. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing. The British media need that conduit to even talk about the topic of Gaza, because they can't just address it normally. So the fact that Bob Vylan or Kneecap or whoever are the way in which the people can even talk about the fact that Gazans are being murdered and that the people of the West Bank are having their fucking houses stolen and shit, is because of people like Kneecap and all the rest of it. So it raises an important issue to the top of the agenda. So actually, it doesn't undermine it. It literally does the thing it was supposed to do, which was to garner fucking headline. Well, not even garner headline, clout.
Yeah.
the actual substantive views. Ash.
Understandable. I think if you're looking for...
Oh, okay, we died. 1 second, everyone. I knew it was going to fucking drop out before we got to the end. So I already started a new one. It's fine. I started it fucking 10 minutes ago. There we go. Where are we? Hang on. Boom. Shakalaka. And now we wait. Oh, yes, I am still fucking here. Stay in the call. Leave me alone. Of course, they called everything. Oh, yeah. Boom. There you go. We good?
Yeah, we're good.
Awesome.
A substantive political engagement. Don't go looking to a band called Bob Vylan or another band called Kneecap. All right. I think that this is part of this long tradition of punk bands who, like I said, are outrageous and do present their politics and their worldview in a way which is sometimes tongue-in-cheek. I mean, you can go back to the Sex Pistols for that. Johnny Rotten, Sid Vicious, Rage Against the Machine, where the chorus of their most famous song is "F you, I won't do what you tell me." So I think that they can be sincere in their politics, but not necessarily sincere in the presentation of that politics, the language and the imagery that's used. And we shouldn't expect that of artists. We should expect that of politicians and journalists, but not...
To be fair, I get the impression from Bob Vylan that they are being sincere in the presentation. When they say, I hear you want your country back. Shut the fuck up. I think that actually is the thing that they hold dear. Like,
yeah, like they're certainly putting their values across, right? But it's not, as I said, an argument that's supposed to be treated like this is the Oxford Debating Society. You know?
No, exactly. Yeah. It's not being put forward as a treatise. No.
Yeah.
Not musicians.
Toby, I mean, obviously people are very upset. Many people are upset about death to the IDF. But had someone shouted death to Hamas or death to the Russian army, would we be having this conversation, do you think?
Well, we might not, because we are allied to the Ukraine and to Israel. I think
so it's okay. So it's literally okay. It's as long as they're just horrible Russian orcs. You can call for their murder. That's fine, actually, because they're not really people, apparently.
Exactly. Literally, all that matters is our Western military alliances. That is the arbiter of morality.
Yeah. So there goes his fucking argument. There goes his moral high horse. It's gone. It's gone.
I mean, like, even if we wanted to, right? The thing is, let's take a military force that is explicitly ethnically homogenous, right? I mentioned this on Novara in the second I put up on my channel too. The Interahamwe, Kev, right?
Right.
The Interahamwe, they are a ethnically homogenous group. They committed a genocide.
Right.
Is it Hutu-phobia for me to say death to the Interahamwe?
Yes. You're Hutophobic. Yes.
Because they were explicitly ethnically homogenous. They were only Hutus. They are more ethnically homogenous than the IDF.
Amazing shit. Okay, yeah.
Because I mean, if you want to call the chant anti-Semitic, which he's about to, one can only assume, right? Then you'd have to apply that same standard to the Interahamwe. It's Hutu-phobia.
Someone said he should go back to MasterChef. Good reference, nice.
But the pertinent hypothetical is, let's suppose they'd been a far-right skinhead band and started throwing around the P word and the N word. I think the BBC in those circumstances would have pulled the plug on the broadcast pretty promptly.
Well, yeah, because that's an ethnic group that's being attacked there, not a military. Again, you've not made anything which is equivalent. You've engaged in false equivalence.
Yes, indeed, because IDF is not an ethnicity.
It's not a protected characteristic.
No.
People try to call it hate speech. It's so silly.
Hate crime!
Which is like the bit from The Office.
You what, sorry?
Where he says, it's like the bit from The Office, like, I was victim of a hate crime. That's not what a hate crime means. Well, I hated it!
Exactly.
It still sounds to me as though what he chanted and what he said, it was borderline, if not straightforwardly, anti-Semitic.
There we go.
I think it's...
But that's only a problem because Israel is our ally. If they weren't,
exactly.
You can be as anti-Semitic as you like. Apparently.
There you go. So he's failed the Interahamwe test.
Are you allowed to be anti-Semitic about Jewish people who aren't Israeli? Say if there was like, for instance, there are Jewish people who exist in Iran. Iran is a geopolitical enemy. So you're allowed to be anti-Semitic against Iranian Jews.
Yeah, if they joined the IRGC, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So apparently that's fine. Or if we ever fell out with Israel, heaven forbid, of course, if we ever became not allied with Israel, would the anti-Semitism then be okay? What a very consistent position you have on racism, Mr. Young.
It's just generally true that expressions of anti-Semitism, certainly anti-Zionism, are not considered as egregious as other forms of racism.
Anti-Zionism isn't racism!
Yeah.
What?
Zionist is now a race. Even though, as previously pointed out, the vast majority of Zionists in the world are not Jewish. They're evangelical Christians in the United States of America. Yeah.
That's crazy. And these right-wingers, right? I don't know Toby Young's specific position, but he certainly speaks for a section of the right wing of society at this point, right?
Yeah.
They are firmly opposed to Muslim expansionism. They firmly believe that the goal of the Muslim community more broadly is the expansion of the caliphate, right? Now, of course, there are certain groups who do genuinely believe that, like the ISIS and ISILs of this world, thankfully.
And
Muslim groups allied with the West to defeat these people, you know?
Yeah, and Zora Mamdani, obviously.
And, of course, yeah, true, the caliphate of New York City, right? So they say, oh, it's terrible when you engage in this kind of colonialism elsewhere, right? This belief in the expansion and the creation of states with the ethno-religious makeup of Muslims, right? When Israelis do it, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. And that's actually, it's racism to oppose that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, no, I oppose it when it's done by any ethnicity, actually, Toby.
Yeah. No, but it's okay. If they're our ally, they're allowed to do genocide. It's fine.
He said
Although,
something.
what would happen if they were doing a genocide against someone who's also our ally? Oh, I think his head would explode. Because is that allowed? I don't even know.
What's like when Pakistan were doing a genocide against Pakistan? Just East Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Is that allowed? I don't know.
Can we attack the Pakistani military? Because that would be both sides. Who knows?
It's like again, it's when America invades the Netherlands to protect someone from American from going to The Hague. That's a convention that's against the what is it, Article 5 or whatever of the.
It's Article 5, yeah.
Yeah. So America would have to invade and attack America to protect the Netherlands from being attacked by America. And because America had attacked America, that would also be a violation of Article 5. So all the other NATO nations would have to attack America for attacking America. It's a nightmare.
About another ethnic group. Let's not forget, Ash, that the majority of the population of Israel are in the IDF, including teenagers.
Well, is that actually true? The majority? I think, if you mean have served at some point, I guess. I can't imagine the majority are currently in the IDF. That would be ridiculous. That would be like 4 million people or something, right?
The current total active and reserve personnel of the IDF is around about 65,000, which is not indeed the 7 million population of Israel.
That's ridiculous. You clown. Now, let's be generous and say he misspoke and said the majority have at some point served in the IDF. Whatever. That might also be true or not. I don't fucking know. But, 65,000? I was expecting it to at least be a couple of 100,000 or something.
Sorry, 650,000. I misspoke, sorry.
Oh, okay, well that makes a bit more sense. But even so, it's still nowhere near half, yeah.
Yeah, and also the population of Israel is 9 million. I misremembered.
Yeah.
Teenagers. So when you're chanting death, death to the IDF, you're essentially calling for the genocide of Jews living in Israel.
Are you? Are you sure about that? Because I'm not sure that's what that means at all, Toby.
I mean, because for two reasons. First of all, is that they were not calling for the death of all of the service members. They were calling for the end of the institution, the death of the institution, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Same with the Death of America chants, right? What I was saying before. So that's, first of all, completely not true in the meaning of what was being said. And second of all, even if in some fucking ridiculous universe they were saying actually want to kill all the IDF soldiers, do you think they would talk about everyone who's ever served in the IDF ever? Or do you think they were more likely would have been speaking about the active service members currently committing the genocide? Come on, use your head, Toby. I know you don't have much of a head under that little chrome dome you've got, but at least use some of it to
Iron
understand
Dome, please.
what Iron Dome. They understand that, again, it was an institution that was being called to be destroyed, not the people within it.
So it's quite hard to defend it, I think. I mean, I don't think he should be prosecuted, to be clear, but nevertheless, I think it was pretty unsavoury. And had it been another ethnic group he was attacking, I think the BBC would have.
Honestly, now, especially they've released that statement saying that it's about the dismantlement of an organisation, blah blah blah. I really don't think you've got a legal leg to fucking stand on. I don't know that there's a fucking a jury in the country that would convict on that basis.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with you there. I absolutely agree. And again, he still talked about ethnic groups as if the IDF is ethnically homogenous. It is not.
No.
It is absolutely not, right?
No.
About 10% of the IDF is non-Jewish because Israel has a population of non-people who aren't Jews, right?
And of course, not all Jewish people are one ethnicity as well.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Pulled the plug.
I completely disagree with you, Toby, which is a shame because I find you normally to be a very, very rigorous thinker. The IDF is an organisation.
Okay, there's no need to be sarcastic, Ash. Come on, now. It's unnecessary.
Sarcastic.
It's unbecoming.
It is an institution. It is an army which is currently carrying out absolutely egregious war crimes and massacres. So egregious that even Wes Streeting, who is, generally very supportive of Israel, said, "Get your house in order." And I think it's possible to object and to find distasteful what Bob Villan or anyone else said. That's entirely your right, without changing substantively what was said. Not talking about an ethnic group, talking about an army, a military currently engaged in an absolutely brutal war. The second thing, and this is important for coming back to the points made by Bob Villan and also by NECAP, which is part of the reason why Bob Villan and also NECAP feel so strongly a sense of solidarity to Palestine, is that they relate it to their own experience of colonialism and racism. Obviously, Bob Villan, this punk duo, both of them are black. NECAP, they say we consider the north of Ireland to...
And, I mean, Bob Villan are from Ipswich, and the living conditions there are worse than Gaza. So...
be an occupied territory. And they make the connections between the history of, say, the Black and Tans who were operating in Ireland and
Palestine,
enacting horrific violence, and the same individuals were involved in 1930s and 1940s, what was then the mandate of British Palestine. So all of these things they have answers for. They have a set of politics around, and it's not about singling out Jews. They've put it in their own words about what it's about. And I think that there is something so pernicious and underhand about when someone's telling you what their politics are and saying, this is why I believe what I believe. Instead, you're saying, no, I can see into your heart, I can read your mind, and this is what I think is really going on. Because it's completely
I think pernicious and underhand is a very concise way of describing basically every Zionist argument.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. You have to pretend that the person didn't say what they actually said. What they actually said was, I hate all Jewish people, or something like that.
Falsifiable.
By shouting death to the IDF, isn't, Bob Villan and those who support what he was shouting, aren't they also, playing into the hands of those people, who say that, if you criticize one, you're doing the other? I mean, it's the word death that is the problem here. But I'm just wondering whether, if he's really serious about raising this issue, Bob Villan, then by, doing it in that way from the stage, he's not doing himself or his cause a service.
What I'd say is that there has been no form of criticism of the State of Israel that the State of Israel or its supporters have found acceptable. From the river to the sea, they don't like that. They don't like it when you call them an apartheid state, despite the fact that leading international human rights organisations like Amnesty, like Human Rights Watch, have called what they're doing apartheid. They don't like it when you call what they're doing a genocide, despite the fact that South Africa and other countries have presented a compelling case at the ICJ.
Well, what would the nation of South Africa know about apartheid? Really?
Literally.
Outrageous.
They don't like it when even Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, who are hardly punk rock radicals, say, hey, you've gone too far, you need to let in some aid. All of that is anti-Semitic. So I think that while you may once more think, ooh, this isn't helpful to the cause, and I think it's fine to have that opinion, I think that one shouldn't think there is a form of expression that wouldn't be labelled as anti-Semitic by supporters of Israel. And I, again, would like to return to this point about the difference between political art and politics itself. Political art has always been about pushing boundaries. You say things in ways which are highly emotive, and punk bands especially have always done that. I mean, you only have
like people forget. Like, I mean, a song by comparison, very, very tame in its rhetoric, but "God Save the Queen" by the Sex Pistols, being released during the Jubilee, was a huge fucking thing. They called them a fascist regime, and it rhymed and everything. Like, this is what punk rock music has always done.
Well, literally, there is a band called Mudrat. They're an Australian punk band, and they have a song called "You Don't Care About Poor People," and the last chorus is literally just "kill all the billionaires, kill all the billionaires, kill all the billionaires, one war, class war." Right? That's the chorus, right? I'm quoting here Twitch. By the way, I'm not calling for anything, right? That's explicitly incitement to violence, right? Because it is targeting specific people.
Yeah. What was the oh god, they did I will save the world, I will get the girl. What were they called? Nah. That's really annoying. Anyway, and they did a song called, was it Kill Your Landlord?
Yeah.
And we're literally talking about hanging the landlord from the top of the stairs.
Well, the dead Kennedys had let's lynch the landlord.
Yeah. No, well, I'm thinking of someone, not the Dead Kennedys, much more recent band. Someone in the chat, one of the hip young musical types will know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Again, this is not a new phenomenon or something. Again, these crusty old bastards going on about like things they clearly don't understand.
Have to go back and listen to songs by The Clash, for instance, like Spanish Bombs. It's all about telling an emotional story, and I think that Bob Vylan they see themselves in that tradition. I mean, one of the rappers who has inspired Bob Vylan directly is Dizzy Rascal, who's not particularly political, but when he raps, all I care about is sex and violence, a heavy bass line is my kind of silence. Sure, that's going to be off-putting to some people, and some would say, oh, Mr. Rascal, you're letting yourself down, but he's a rapper. These are punk artists. What do you want from them?
The trouble with all this, I guess, isn't it? And we see this in America as well, that there is no universal free speech. Someone's free speech is someone else's unfree speech. Elon Musk rages about
the King Blues. That was it. Yeah. They also had another line in one of their songs about what was it? I float around the perimeter. I only follow the mob to lynch the Prime Minister. Again, you can argue whether you like that line or not, but that's a pretty explicit call to violence. And they were allowed to play with Glastonbury. That didn't get censored. So you can openly say, I want to murder the Prime Minister of this country, but you can't even say, I want to dismantle the military of a foreign country. What?
They need to have free speech on X, his own platform, but if people criticize him, well, he cancels them. So what is the definition of free speech, Toby, in a deeply tribally divided democracy like America and to some extent like ours?
Well, as I say, Matt, I like, as my guide rope, I like the Brandenburg test, which says that speech should be protected. This is on public platforms in the public square, not necessarily on privately owned companies, where it often conflicts with...
Well, I thought that was what free speech was, Toby. I thought it was when you got angry when people were removed because of breaking terms of service. I thought that's what right-wing thought cancel culture was.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically the reenactment of the Stasi when someone gets banned from Twitter. Yeah.
Literally. That's what all these people in the fucking free speech union guys have been fucking furious about for ages, right? Even things like universities disinviting guests was a free speech issue to these people when no state actors were involved in any of this process, right? I'm not a free speech absolutist. I never have been. I think there are certain times of speech that should be banned, right? Mm-hmm. I think it has to be past a really, really high threshold. Like Holocaust denial is one of the things I think should be banned in terms of bannable speech, right? But I don't think that you can necessarily have in total free speech. But I broadly am sympathetic to the arguments around broader levels of free speech, right? But only in terms of what the state can or can't do in terms of taking away your freedom. As far as private institutions and private individuals are concerned, they can do what the fuck they want, right? Like, if the agent wants to drop Bob Vylan, that's not cancel culture. They personally, if they don't want to associate someone who says death to the IDF, I'm sure someone else will pick them up, right? Yeah. That's their choice. That's their private individual choice to be able to do that. Likewise, when people have their tours cancelled because they run an unsavory comedian or whatever, it's fine. You're not going to be able to appeal to everybody, and they have a choice whether to associate with you or not, or a choice to let you use their fucking platform, especially if you break the terms of service that you signed up to. As long as the government doesn't get involved with shutting down your speech, that's the line. That's the bar in terms of where I start getting mad about it,
I think we've disagreed about Holocaust denial. Well,
we did
about it being banned, not about Holocaust denial. Just to clarify. And of course, again, the kind of big litmus test is if you're anyone who says they're a free speech absolutist, say, okay, is it okay for me to publish that you fuck kids then? No.
Well, even if you do, it's not illegal in a criminal case. That's a civil case, right?
Well, exactly.
We're talking about criminal law here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think libel laws are silly in terms of the way that they're so easy to abuse in the UK.
In the UK, ridiculously so. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. American libel laws are a little bit more sensible than ours are.
Well, I think. Go on. Sorry. Go on.
But even then, I would only ever classify these things. They should be civil matters rather than criminal matters. When it comes to free speech, I think the line between criminal and civil, there are different tests here, right?
Whereas I think in America they're as silly, but in the other direction. When Elon Musk can argue that the phrase calling someone a pedophile is a generic insult and get away with it, that's ridiculous. Obviously.
with the right to freedom of association. But in the public square, I think the test should be the Brandenburg test, which means that unless you can show that the speech is going to lead to imminent lawless action, then it should be permitted. And how that, one way of trying to understand that, Matt, is if a white supremacist group marches through a Jewish neighborhood chanting death to the Jews, then that speech is protected by the First Amendment. But if they say, kill this particular Jew in this particular place at this particular time, that isn't protected. And part of the rationale for that is, I think this became clear during the Lucy Connolly case. I don't think Lucy Connolly should have been prosecuted for that tweet, because I don't think it's possible to show definitively that what she said led to an outbreak of serious violence. Now, serious violence did follow what she tweeted, but the fact that A follows B doesn't mean B caused A. Had she called for a particular...
No, just total coincidence that repeated calls for violence might lead to violence at some point. Cool. So
also,
his standard is just a bit fucking ridiculous then. He's a bit American.
It's also, it is worth pointing out as well that the sentences were specific to the time period, right? In terms of the overall guidelines with regards to sentencing, as far as I'm aware, at least from the CPS, is that during periods of rioting, of mass unrest, you do confer harsher punishments. You go to the upper bound of what the sentencing guidelines say, because it has to act as a deterrent for more lawlessness, right?
Yeah, in the public interest. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a public interest ensuring that you don't see more people attempt to incite more of that same violence, right? So you would crack down hard.
And to be fair,
I think she was sent down for too long, but
I would agree. I think the sentence was too much, but and it clearly worked in this instance, because as soon as people started being filmed, especially because now you can film. You used to never ever get a camera inside a courtroom in the UK. But now you can. They have some cameras, and you can have the guy going, "Look, you're a dickhead. You did some rioting. 9 months. Fuck off."
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, people were like, "You know what? I don't fancy carrying on rioting, lads. I think I might stay at home tonight." You know, and it died off pretty much straight away.
Particular hotel housing asylum seekers to be burnt down, and that hotel was burnt down, then yes, it would have failed the Brandenburg test. She should be prosecuted. But because she didn't, and because she added the caveat "for all I care," which suggested indifference rather than actual incitement, I don't think she should have been prosecuted. I think one interesting case is NECAP at Glastonbury this weekend did call for people to riot outside Westminster Magistrates Court when one of the band members is going to be on trial for raising a Hezbollah flag. And I think that is an interesting case, because to my mind that could fail the Brandenburg test. He's not just calling for a riot in general in response to the prosecution, or they're not just calling for that, but that they're calling for a specific riot at a specific place at a particular time. So I think that probably does fail the Brandenburg test.
But Toby, so according to your definition then, and the Brandenburg test, as you just...
So that's fun. He's come up with his own way of just picking and choosing bits he doesn't like, and just being like, I think these people should be prosecuted, actually. Like, shut the fuck up, dude.
But described it. What was said on the stage about the IDF then passes that test. That's free speech, because it's not specific.
I agree. Yeah, I think it should be. If we had a First Amendment in this country, it would be protected. And actually, I think, I mean, it's hard to predict.
So was the BBC right to broadcast it? Was the BBC right to broadcast it?
That doesn't mean the BBC. That doesn't mean the BBC were right to broadcast it. I think the
well,
BBC,
if it's free speech, why not?
Well, the BBC isn't committed to broadcasting anything provided it's lawful. The BBC makes editorial.
Right, but it's not that they've chosen. They didn't create the thing. They're showing a live event that somebody else is putting on. This isn't a television show that they've put together. This isn't an editorial choice in that respect. If you're going to show all of the stages, and this is what happened, right? You can show all of the stages, all live on the iPlayer, all the way through the day, but for some reason you banned this one act. That's ridiculous. You have to show the whole thing, or just don't bother.
I don't really care. I don't care. The BBC can show what the fuck they want, right? I genuinely don't care whether the BBC show it or not. That's up to them. That's up to what they think that they want. They feel happy showing to their audiences. It's up to them. I genuinely don't care. the problem is that people are trying to say the BBC were bad for doing it, or the BBC should sack the Director General, that it was that it was breaching the terms of the license. I'm like, of course it's not.
No.
Absolutely, that's nonsense, right? If they wanted to make the decision, say, well, we think it's unsavory, so we don't want to show it, I would be upset that I couldn't see Bob Vylan, but I wouldn't begrudge them for doing so. But likewise, the other way around, like, why it's an insane statement that to broadcast somebody else's thing with a fucking disclaimer at the start is a violation of the public terms of service. Of course it isn't.
Yeah. One thing I will say as well is that there are other acts on those stages that could have said things that were controversial as well. Rod Stewart has made inflammatory comments in the past about how he felt that Enoch Powell was right, and literally this weekend, before his performance, had come out in support of the Reform Party, which has its controversial elements, shall we say. And no one was like, well, the BBC should have preemptively known that maybe Rod Stewart would say something bad, therefore we're not showing Rod fucking Stewart. Like, you know what I mean? It's a rock and roll show, or well, not necessarily that genre, but it's a live performance with some volatile people. That's what makes it entertaining and worth watching. Just show the fucking thing. And if people don't like it, they can complain. That's cool. Art is meant to inspire things, including hatred. That's fine. Jesus Christ. Why spend millions of pounds of public money to buy the rights to show an event and then go, no, actually, we're going to pick and choose some bits?
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
Fuck's sake. It's like, if everyone has to pay the TV licence, then people get represented, surely.
Editorial decisions about what to broadcast and what not to broadcast, and it ought to have, a degree of latitude and not just broadcast anything, provided it's lawful. I think most viewers reasonably expect the television company they're paying for to observe certain standards of propriety in what they decide to broadcast, and I think it fell short of that.
Okay, so right. The same guy that gets mad when people get disinvited from universities, right? Public institutions pick and choose who they want to have speaking at their events. That's cancel culture. That's a violation of free speech. That's undermining the role of universities. How dare they do that? Yet his position on BBC is, they should absolutely be taking editorial decisions to ensure that people they think are unsavoury don't get shown, right? Yeah. Well, if the BBC are allowed to cancel people for being unsavoury, surely universities can too. And I think both should be able to do so. I think it's fine if the BBC said that they wouldn't. I would disagree, but that'll be up to them. In the same way it's up to universities. They want to invite fucking TERFs to speak at their fucking campuses.
And you can't argue, well, they're in receipt of public money. I'm sorry, what in fact is the BBC funded by then?
True.
So just on what one of the band members of NECAP said regarding the riot, again, I was at the set and he specifically said afterwards, I'm only joking, don't do that. So while I think it's fair to say, was that necessarily wise, considering the broader context of one of their members being charged with terror-related offences?
It probably wasn't wise in terms of the legality of that man not going to jail, but in terms of sales, ching.
I think that, when someone says, I'm only joking, for me, that should be taken as a mitigating factor. I agree.
Just like when I say in Minecraft, I genuinely always mean in Minecraft. I do, honest.
I agree with Toby, actually, that I think the Lucy Connolly sentence was unduly excessive, and I think it sets a very bad precedent for prosecutions regarding forms of expression that morally I condemn, but that doesn't necessarily mean, or it doesn't follow, that you want the state to intervene in all of those cases. I'd like to add to that the use of terror legislation and the prescription of terror organizations, because there's a freedom of speech dimension as well. So when it comes to a group like Palestine Action, if I were to say, following their...
You can still legally say you support, it's fine.
At time of recording.
Prescription, I think what they did was brave and honourable and justified. Under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act, I could be charged for being reckless as to whether that could cause someone else to support Palestine Action. And there is no journalistic exemption from the Terrorism Act. What we've seen is pro-Palestine journalists such as Asa Winstanley. His house was raided. A judge later ruled that that was unlawful, and he's being investigated under terror legislation. So I think that there is something very troubling here, which is the Terrorism Act was brought in the year 2000. At the time, the Home Secretary said, we're not going to use this for domestic or industrial or environmental cases, right? They specifically said we're going to use this for international terrorism. But now we're seeing a government abuse that legislation, I think, in such a way which has very chilling implications for free speech.
If I've got this right, you both seem to agree on this, that this wasn't a criminal offence, you know, although it's being investigated now by the police, that, you know, these are First Amendment free speech rights. But you also both seem to agree that, you know, Israel has a special case here. You, Toby, seem to think that Israel is being singled out for criticism, and you, Ash, seem to think that Israel is being, you know, getting an easy ride on what it's been doing in the Gaza Strip.
Just to be clear, I think it's possible that what Bob Villan said might be a criminal offence. I think it turns on whether the IDF can be defined as a racial group. Now, on the
You're a fucking idiot. You're an idiot. Listen to the thing you just said.
Well, because it just isn't. It just isn't. Again, like, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Every Druze member, every Arab member, every Circassian member of the IDF is just as much of a disgusting monster as every Jewish member of the IDF, right? Yeah. I am an equal opportunities anti-IDF enjoyer, right? Yeah. I dislike all of them equally because, again, it is the fact that they are members of the IDF that is the problem. It is the fact that they occupy Palestine that's the problem. It's the fact they mow the lawn that's the problem. It's the fact they've genocided the Gazans that's the problem. Simple as that.
Yeah, it turns on whether you can define the IDF as a racial group. Oh, well, you can't. End of discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Face of it, you'd think, well, no, so they can't be prosecuted for stirring up racial hatred under the Public Order Act. But then Lucy Connolly was prosecuted for stirring up racial hatred on the grounds that asylum seekers are a racial group. Now, had she pled not guilty and the Free Speech Union defended her, we probably would have argued that asylum seekers aren't a racial group. They're made up of many different ethnic groups, and they're not defined by their membership of a racial group so much as the fact that they're seeking asylum here. So I think that would have been our defence, and I think if Bob Villan are prosecuted, that would be their defence too. The idea.
Well, I would argue if that's the way, if his description of the case that they were described as a racial group, that was a miscarriage of justice then, because asylum seeker isn't a racial group.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
If his description, and again, it's Toby Young, so if his description of that is correct, which I don't know, I've not heard that from any other person, and I would think lots of right-wingers would use that line of argumentation if it were true. But I've not heard that from anyone else, so pinch of salt.
It's not a racial group, it's a military organisation, and this is perfectly fair comment. And I think for that reason, I think because that defence would be pretty strong, I think for that reason they're very unlikely to be prosecuted. But then I don't think Lucy Connolly should have been prosecuted either.
But you also both believe that Israel has been singled out either for criticism in your case, Toby, or for being let off the hook in your case, Ash.
Absolutely. And just to go back to what it was that Bob Villan said, which is death to the IDF, I think that...
She's definitely enjoying saying that on the news. Like, I do the joke about, you can say support Palestine action, but she's like, she gets to go on the fucking news and be like, death to the IDF. Cheeky minx.
He was echoing an emotion of disgust and of horror and of anger that is shared by many people, not just in this country, but across the world. When you look at the images of starving children, of bombed schools, of bombed hospitals, when you see the assassination of journalists, when you see the restriction of aid, and when you see, as I said before, toddlers being admitted to hospital with sniper wounds to the head, of course you would want that organisation, which has perpetuated all these horrors, to end. And I think that if you are going to make the argument that saying death to the IDF is anti-Semitic, you end up in a really silly place. Because then you'd have to argue, well, destroy ISIS must be Islamophobic. Because then you're saying there's no separation between an organisation which has got political goals, which is armed, which carries out war crimes, and the community that they claim to represent in its broadest possible sense. And I think that's a stupid place to end up in, and really, really worrying if that's where our political class and where the editorial decision making of the BBC is at.
I think Ash and I probably disagree about whether singling out Israel for particular criticism and holding Israel to such a high standard, much higher than other countries in the region and much higher than China, is...
No, we do hold them to the same standard.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? I hate it. I really, really, really hate it when right-wingers claim that being pro-Palestine or opposing Israel is part of the Omni cause, and that we don't throw the same accusations elsewhere. Bollocks, right?
Yeah.
Find me somebody who's anti-Israel, who isn't also anti-Turkey for their ethnic cleansing of Kurds, or we're anti-Azerbaijan for their ethnic cleansing of Armenians, or anti-Indonesia for their ethnic cleansing of the people of East Timor.
A really pertinent point to the dynamic that Toby Young believes in, that if you're a member of a military that is allied to Britain, that you're okay. Show me a leftist that thinks it's okay that Saudi Arabia has genocided people in Yemen. But again, that would be fine according to Toby Young, because we're allied to Saudi Arabia, so that's fine, actually.
And that's the thing, because they goes back to Ash debating with Piers Morgan all of those years ago on the GMB sofa, when
I'm literally a communist.
People that aren't out there protesting like Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Yes, there are. You've just never heard about it or bothered even to look. Right, plenty of people out there protesting the visit of MBS. They said, hands off Yemen, stop committing war crimes in Yemen, because that's what they were doing with our weapons.
Yep.
It's ultimately motivated by a degree of anti-Semitism. I'm not saying that because it is, it should therefore be prescribed. I have no more truck with the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism than I do with the APPG on British Muslims definition of Islamophobia. I don't think any particular religious or ethnic group should be given special privileged protections in the public square. So I think Ash and I probably agree with each other about that. I'm not suggesting that speech should be prosecuted because it's anti-Semitic and that particular groups should enjoy special legal protection. I don't think they should. I think everyone should be equal in the eyes of the law.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Ash Sarkar, Toby Young, thank you very much to both of you. That's it for this episode of The Fall.
Well, you get the idea. I think that was a worthwhile piece of discourse. I think Ash did really well. Set out the points pretty conclusively.
She always smashes it.
She's a clever, erudite person. Almost as good as the other... What's the other woman's name who does Navarra? I've forgotten her name.
Dalia Gabriel.
No, I'm on about you.
Oh, right.
I'm doing the same bit.
You're trying to butt me up and I was just completely oblivious.
Exactly. Ah, well. Never mind.
Good at this. I'm really good at this.
Yes.
Where shall we redirect our viewers to?
On
the YouTubes, I'm going to send people off to Alec Gunter. Who else is live on the Twitches?
No idea.
Oh, who's this? I think I found someone new I've never seen before, called Very Nice TV. The name of the stream just says cruelty is the point when it comes to ice, which is true. And she seems to be it's a pretty small channel, and I feel like giving help to a small channel.
Okay, Very Nice TV. There they are. Yeah. Okay.
Very _nice _TV.
Yeah, there they are. Okay. Well,
let's give them a nice little surprise, shall we? I apologise if it's like shit libbery or whatever, but I'm sure you'll be able to have an interesting discussion. But whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
She's criticising ice, so therefore I'm a fan.
Yeah, we're on board.
So I'll be back probably to another very late one tomorrow, because I'm at the cricket tomorrow, so I won't be able to stream during the day. But I'll probably be back pretty late, and also late on Wednesday as well, because I'm doing Navarra hosting on Wednesday.
It's Wednesday tomorrow.
Oh, Thursday. So Thursday I'm hosting Navarra. So I'll be late streams me every day this week.
Yeah. Well, I'll be on with Curtis tomorrow. I'm doing.
You're doing Normal Island live. Yes. So in my stead, at 7:45 you can go and watch some Normal Island with Kevin Curtis.
Indeed, so.
Which means you should follow KF Logan 1875 to be able to know when he's live to watch it.
Indeed, and you should go and follow No Justice MTG because she's awesome.
I am very awesome, and you'd also take care. You should also stay safe, and you should also free Palestine.
You should always free Palestine.
Bye. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.